3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Wednesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all of our great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course, streaming on YouTube. 855-212-4CBS is the number to jump on in. 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. The athletic director with the Colorado Buffaloes, the man that hired Coach Prime, Rick George, is going to stop by 20 minutes from now. And then coming up in an hour 20 from now, the man that runs Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, will join us. I got Moist Mike making his return along the other way, in addition to maybe the most happiest person on the planet right now. Yesterday, he was Mike McDaniel. Today, he is back to being Stuart Kovacs. And last night, it's funny how these things happen. For whatever it is, and this new schedule, I've been getting used to it. I'm going to bed earlier. I'm not staying up till like 2, 3 in the morning like I used to do when I was working later here on CBS Sports Radio. And for whatever the reasons were, I just couldn't go to sleep last night. So I'm perusing the internet. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, doing some post-show clips, things like that. And out of nowhere, I saw a tweet from Adam Schefter. And when you see a tweet that says so-and-so got fired, with the way that Twitter is operated these days, X, whatever you want to call it, I go, that's probably a fake account. That's someone that paid for verification. They wanted to get a rise out of a bunch of us, change their name to Adam Schefter, and it's not real. And then you go to Adam Schefter's account, and it's like, oh, wow, this is actually his account. This has, 11, 12 million followers that Adam Schefter does have. And the news was by now, as everyone knows, that Josh McDaniels and David Ziegler have been relieved of their duties, a.k.a. they were fired as the head coach and general manager of the Las Vegas Raiders. My first reaction was, finally, Mark Davis did something positive. He finally made a logical move. Now, with that being said, even though I was the guy that got on the radio yesterday and I advocated for them to be fired, and I said you'd be the biggest buffoon to bring back Josh McDaniels next year, I was legitimately concerned about the future of the Raiders and if Josh McDaniels would actually be allowed to coach this team to start next season. Because I wasn't sure how long his deal was. It comes out now that it was 6 years. I thought it was 5 years. But when you're paying John Gruden whatever you're paying him from the settlement, and then you're going to have to pay Josh McDaniels to not coach the team and now find a replacement, I was operating under the belief that you may have to bite the bullet and you may have to basically just say you're cheap and stick around and hold on to Josh McDaniels for at least the start of next season. Now, that is what bad organizations do. And the Raiders are a bad organization. So even when they do something positive, even though it will elicit a big, exuberant, joyous response, I was still startled by it, and I was still surprised by it. And now in the immediate aftermath, okay, you name Antonio Pierce the interim head coach, so be it. It's an audition. We'll see what happens with it. I don't think he'll get the job next year because Rich Bisaccia was just in this position 2 years ago when John Gruden got into his issues. Rick Bisaccia kicked ass, take names, and he didn't even get the job, and they settled on Josh McDaniels. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I expect Antonio Pierce, who now gets the first opportunity at it, to become the full-time replacement when you start Raiders football next year. But when you go through the details of this, you always know that there's a bad situation with the Raiders, but you never know where it comes from. And this one seemed like it was the owner in Mark Davis who was supporting Josh McDaniels. That's what it appeared to be. And deservedly so. The players were annoyed and they were irate because you have guys like Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams and Max Crosby, who are 3 of the top 20 players in the league. And you saw the report last week where they had a team meeting leading up to this game on Monday Night Football where they lost in embarrassing fashion to the Detroit Lions, and the score doesn't even indicate how bad of a game it was for the Raiders. And at the end of that report, I even chuckled on it on the air on Monday when they're like, people thought this was a positive meeting and everyone came together to air their grievances. And I'm like, that doesn't add up. You had players that were visibly frustrated. You had players who basically had an open forum to just trash the coach, trash the GM, trash the culture with the Raiders. And you're telling me with the egos and the alphas that we deal with in the NFL and how there's no future for the Raiders after one meeting, this was all going to be solved, and now there's positive momentum leading into that Lions game? Bull crap. And it went right away, whatever positive momentum there was, which was none. It went right away when you get embarrassed on Monday Night Football and Josh Jacobs isn't getting the ball enough. Devontae Adams got missed twice when he was wide open by Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's throwing his helmet down on the sideline. And after the game, you have Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, 2 proud human beings, 2 alphas, 2 dogs, 2 elite studs. They were so dejected. They were demoralized. And if you wanted to sell me that there was hope and there was optimism and maybe this meeting what was going to change the tenure of Josh McDaniels with the Raiders, if those things were actually true and if those things were actually believable, after one game and the first game after that meeting, there wouldn't have been dejection being displayed to the level as if it looked like you lost a family member and that blank stare that you have when we've all gone through that from Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. Because they know as long as Josh McDaniels is there, this situation in Las Vegas cannot be fixed. So now he is out. You also got to see Mark Davis, so we'll get to him in just a second, how much of a problem he is. But Mark Davis, even after a win, was showing frustration. Like, we're talking about how they handled this after a loss against Detroit, which led to the firing of Josh McDaniels. But I was reading an article in The Athletic this morning that said after a win up against Green Bay, you had Mark Davis, who was visibly frustrated and had a heated meeting and a contentious meeting with Josh McDaniels. Think about that. I know it's not hard to remember all the victories for the Raiders because there's very few of them on the season. There's only 3. But they start off the year with the win against Denver. Then they get embarrassed against Buffalo. They lose to Pittsburgh, where the coach had no clue what he was doing towards the end of the game and took a field goal, which I still don't get what he was doing. You lose to the Chargers. And then after a 3-game losing streak to get your second win of the season against the Green Bay Packers, your owner is frustrated after a win. If that's the most Raider thing ever, then I don't know what the most Raider thing ever is. Because it's almost as if Mark Davis doesn't have a touch and isn't in touch with reality. Like, you would think an owner who has been embarrassing, an owner who doesn't have a lot of wins attached to his resume, an owner where it feels like, every 2 years they are hiring a new coach, he would celebrate these wins. And I somewhat give him credit. And it shows how toxic and ugly and nasty this was behind the scenes and how McDaniels just didn't relate to anyone on the roster, where even after a win, and I get it, it wasn't pretty. It was only 17-13 against the Packers, and they're no good. You had your owner upset with the coach, and they had somewhat of a heated meeting. So this is a great day for Raiders fans. Josh McDaniels is out. I'm looking at Stu right now. I've never seen Stu smile like this in my life. He is so happy. This is almost as if the Raiders just won a Super Bowl. And when you're that bad and you're that lowly of a franchise and you've been that pathetic, it's days like this when you move on from incompetence where you could finally smile and finally jump up and down like a fat kid in a candy store. With that being said, though, Raiders fans, yeah, it's out with Josh McDaniels, but Mark Davis is still the owner of this team. And in right now, the immediate aftermath of this fiesta, that reality will settle in, and you have to be reminded that Mark Davis is still the one that's making the next decision. So it's great that Josh McDaniels is out. That guy was terrible. That guy was awful. That guy was brutal as a head football coach. But now you still need to rely on Mark Davis to make the right hire. And Mark, you don't need to listen to a talk show host, but at this rate, it may behoove you to listen to me in terms of who you should hire as your next coach. Because whatever you've done for the last decade, ever since your dad has passed away, has just been marinated in just incompetence. It's been marinated in jackassery, and it's been marinated in losing. So even though it seems crazy to listen to a talk show host, you may as well listen to me, because I got 3 names that should get calls to become the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 1, the man that's coaching Michigan right now that's dealing with his scandal, in Jim Harbaugh. I don't care what happened at college, at Michigan, the scandal, all that stuff. The facts are Jim Harbaugh in the NFL, in 4 years as a head coach, went to 3 NFC title games and also went to a Super Bowl. You would dream for 1 championship game appearance at this rate if you're the Raiders. Number 2, Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. It is embarrassing that that man doesn't have a head coaching job yet. What he's done the last 3 seasons on a big stage in Cincinnati, we don't appreciate Lou Anarumo enough, because what we do in the sports talk world, all we do is talk about the head coach and the quarterback. Let's give some credit to that great Cincinnati Bengals defense. And then number 3, if you could turn the direction of the Detroit Lions around, and if you could provide a competent offense, and you could get Jared Goff to appear like he's a franchise quarterback, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, would be a good name. Those were the first three names last night when I couldn't fall asleep, and I see this immediate news from Adam Schefter that David Ziegler and Josh McDaniels are fired. My thoughts went, wow, I'm surprised they actually did it now. Great for Stu. And then it was, all right, how do you find a way to rectify not just this mess, this catastrophe that's been going on for the last 10 years with the Raiders? Because the Raiders used to be a proud franchise. The Raiders fan base, it is amazing how they still keep on going back for more pain and more suffering, and they have great fans, and they deserve better. We go to events all around the country, whether it's the draft, the Super Bowl, any NFL event, there's always Raiders fans. Like, you expect them at the draft because they're picking high up each and every year. But at the Super Bowl, you always have great Raider fans there, and you could tell they're imploring the sports gods, pretty please, let us get back to the promised land one day. And now this becomes the biggest hire in Mark Davis's life. He has to get this right. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he will get it right, but it should be easy. Harbaugh and Arumo Johnson. That's where you start, and you see where you go from there. And hopefully someone's willing to take the job too, because that's another thing. The teams come calling. There's going to be a lot of jobs open. How attractive do we view the Raiders? I'm going to let you in on a little breaking news. Outside of living in Las Vegas and the money that comes with the contract, it's not that much of an attractive job. Stu, I want to go to you because I know you were sleeping. I sent you a text, and then I guess Stu rolled over at like 4:35 in the morning because Stu goes right to Twitter, and you were shocked, and you were like, finally, thank God that this thing finally happened. You even said it yesterday. You were expecting and preparing just like how I was that this organization would find a way to go against logic and go against doing the right thing, and they would end up bringing McDaniels back for next year. So enjoy this celebration. It's an open mic policy right now for Stuart Kovacs. I need to hear your true thoughts, you being the Raider fan of this show.
Yeah, it was actually my cat that woke me up to feed her. So that's why I woke up at 4 o'clock.
Good little kitty.
Yeah, and I saw Twitter. I saw like 8 text messages, one of them being from you, and I was elated, very happy. Doesn't obviously change anything really for this year. That doesn't, they go to McDaniels. They're not Super Bowl contenders or something like that. But I was worried. I thought they were going to hold on to Ziegler and McDaniels for a third year. And the fact that they at least move on now, get the ball rolling for next year. We'll see what happens. I would love Harbaugh. I think Harbaugh would be the guy. Any of those 3 names you mentioned, I think would be very good, a good start. But yeah, it's Mark Davis, and that's the question. Is he going to hire the right guy, which he really has not yet?
Well, eventually you got to get it right. Even Mendoza found a way to put a few balls into the outfield time and time again. Eventually you have to find a way to get it right. And I hope for you that this is the moment that they actually get it right. Now, you hear me say, I hope. I'm with you. If you expect the Raiders to get it right, I have a bridge to sell for you as well coming up at the end of the show. I'm just happy. I called my agent right when this news happened, and I said we could hold off the lawsuit because I was contemplating suing the Raiders because I don't like the way that they've been treating Stuart Kovacs throughout the years. I was looking out for you. I was ready to have this big litigious lawsuit against Mark Davis because you've really been down in the dumps. You've looked just terrible the last few weeks, and you just look dejected, and you go, I have to watch this crap week in and week out. Like, as you said, now it doesn't get necessarily better for this season, but you don't have to keep on getting slapped in the face by the same person, and they got rid of Josh McDaniels and David Ziegler as well. So good for Stu.
Thanks, Zach.
We're
Appreciate
all happy.
that. Yeah.
We just want to bring winners here at CBS Sports Radio. And Samter jumped from a loser to a winner, so I can't get on board with Samter's new choice for a football team. But you're someone that's loyal. You're someone that has stuck with this football team, and you could have jumped bandwagons just like Samter. And I want to see you get rewarded with being a winner once again. All righty, we'll take a break here on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. The AD at Colorado, Rick George, will join us next.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, rocking and rolling on this Wednesday. This is Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. We've had Coach Prime on this show quite a few times in the past. Now let's go out to the guest line and welcome in the man that hired him at Colorado. That's the AD, in Rick George, kind enough to join us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Colorado has a cool deal going on right now. For $15, you could visit their website and you can get a commemorative ticket from this past season and a few details there. Rick, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much for doing this, and how are you?
I'm great, Zach. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so let me start you off with this. We've talked a lot about your program this year, but going back to last year, we did a lot of topics and a lot of days of should Deion Sanders get a Power 5 job in college football? And I've always said, why not? I thought he was going to get hired by the SEC. He lands, though, with you guys. When you were going through this search and trying to build this from the ground up, when did you say to yourself, okay, we need Deion Sanders, and why did you think that?
Well, look, the first day we started the search, he was number one on the list. So that's where we started, and certainly had a lot of other candidates to interview and talk to. But I know when he and I had the opportunity to meet face to face, and when I walked out of his house, I knew that this was the guy that we needed to have, that he would turn this program around quickly, and he'd bring an energy level that was necessary and needed for where we were with our program. So
it's a two-way street, as you know, just because, right, you want Coach Prime didn't necessarily mean that he wanted you guys. When did you feel, all right, it's going to take two to tango here, and now we're starting to dance a little bit?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we didn't talk a lot. A lot of people in these searches talk a lot, but we didn't talk a lot. He was really focused on what he wanted to do at Jackson State, and I respected that. A lot of text messages, and here's what the field looks like today, and here's the crowd that we have with a 1-7 team, and things like that. And we had some mutual friends that were helpful, and here we are.
It's a beautiful campus. My sister a few years ago, along with her husband and now my niece, they moved to Centennial, so which is not that far from Boulder, as you know. But if someone, let's say, is listening to you for the first time and they know a lot about Colorado now, and they're like, oh, why should I want to come to school here? Why should I want to be a part of this athletic program? What would you tell them about the campus a little bit?
Well, look, I mean, there's very few campuses that sit a mile and a half from the Rocky Mountains and have that backdrop. And, if you love outdoors and skiing and hiking and all the things that rafting and those kind of things, this is a great place. The climate's fantastic. You can get 4 seasons in one day here. That happens, but you can get snow and 2 days later it's gone. And, the summers are great, and the fall is beautiful, and the weather's great. So that's one thing. Then we've got this great institution that kind of sits in the foothills of the Rockies, and it's a great campus, great leadership, great academics, and it's a safe community, and it's a great place to live and to be. And this is my second time back here, and I'm really happy where we are right now.
So when you're building this, as Rick George, the AD of Colorado, joins us right now, I think there's a lot of people that just jump on this season and they forget where you guys were a year ago, only one win. I would imagine that you guys would have signed up for 4-4, but with how good of a start it was, 3-0, now some people are starting to doubt Colorado. Where is this program heading? So with that being said, I know that this is a successful season, regardless of how these final 4 games go. But how do you kind of look back at this season so far with some good and some bad as you go through a football season?
Look, Coach and I have the same expectations, right? We both wanted to win every game. We wanted to dominate. We wanted to win. That's just who he is and who I am. Certainly feel good about where we are and where we're headed. This is just the start. I believe in what we're doing, and I believe in what Coach is doing. And this is just the start of something big, and I think the future is incredibly bright. And I'm looking forward to playing Oregon State this weekend and letting the chips fall where they may. But I know we're going to compete. We're going to get after it, and we're going to have a great sellout crowd. And every place we played this year, home or away, has been sold out, and that's kind of a testament to Coach Prime and the interest in him. And are there people that want us to fail? Of course. But there's also a lot of people that want us to succeed, and we're seeing that with viewership numbers and crowds that we're seeing every place that we play.
So this is the question that I'm sure you've already been asked 9,000 times already this season, and it happens when you're winning and you're having this excitement like we're talking about, and it's a compliment to what you guys have done this year at Colorado. But how do you make sure that Coach Prime stays more than just a year or two, and he's here for a few years in Colorado?
Look, we had before he got here, we had a really candid discussion about what Colorado was, what we had, what we didn't have. And I think having those discussions and trusting each other from the start's important. I think our relationship, we'll have those discussions about what are the needs that we have. And my job is to make sure that he has the resources necessary to win a national championship and to win a Big 12 championship next year and those kind of things. And so, I have high expectations that he'll be here for a while, and I would hope that he would be here for a long time, because I think he'll set win records here, and he'll do some things that haven't been done at Colorado in a long time.
For you, I'm just wondering on a personal level, and I know that you could probably answer this question by saying a lot, but what have you really learned from Coach Prime just being around him for this past year or so?
What I've learned is, he is who he is, and I embrace that. He's authentic. He's real. He says what's on his mind, and I support that, and I think that's important. I mean, he's a guy that has great core values for himself, and it's about family, faith, accountability, discipline, all of those things that speak to me. And I've learned a lot from him. He stays the course. He addresses issues, good or bad, doesn't shy away from them, and I think that's important.
Yeah, that's why, when he made the comment last week about the offensive line, I was like, people don't remember the first speech to the team. He's going to do things his way, and he doesn't apologize for it, nor should he, because it's worked out so far. You got to develop players. He knows how to develop players, but in the world of the transfer portal right now, it'd be foolish to not try to really dive deep in there and get as many talented players as possible.
No, look, I mean, that was about the only thing that I was surprised at was his conversation with the team the first time. I was like, oh boy. That kind of set the tempo for where he was going, and I appreciate that. And there were some people that took offense to that, but that's who he is. He's a winner. He's going to win here. But the thing that is great about him is he wants to develop these young men to be great citizens when they're done playing football, whether it's at Colorado or in the NFL. And, he spends a lot of time on that. And I think that's important too. And it's not just about wins and losses. It's about developing young men. And he tells their parents that, and he does what he says he's going to do. And who wouldn't want that?
I know he said that he doesn't have interest in coaching in the NFL, but just because he says that, a lot of times people don't listen. NFL teams are going to come calling. Do you genuinely believe that he will never consider the NFL when they come calling this offseason?
Look, I believe what he says. That's in almost a year now that we've known each other, a little more than a year that we've known each other now. He does what he says he's going to do. And if that's what he says, I believe him. And, let's move on to the next thing. And, for us, it's about Oregon State this weekend. And we've got 3 more games. Recruiting's coming up. And again, the future, as I look at it, is extremely bright.
Rick George, before we let you run, I got a few more things I want to ask you. The AD
Sure.
At Colorado. We all have read about what happened at the Rose Bowl this past week in the locker room when your players were playing. They had jewelry that was stolen. Just what did you say to your kids afterwards? And I know it was a road game, but how do you try to prevent these things from happening moving forward?
Look, we'll tighten up our security. And look, the Rose Bowl's a first-class organization. And, whatever our student athletes lost, we'll make sure that, that we make sure that they're whole when this is all done. And it's really hard with personal items. But again, we're going to do what's right for our student athletes. And it's unfortunate, that happened. But, we'll focus on, moving ahead and we'll make sure that we tighten up our security when we're on the road, and we'll tighten it up at home for our opponents as well, because we certainly don't want that to happen to one of our guests.
I remember when you were in this interview process and you had these conversations with Coach Prime. I think last year, I remember you saying you were on the college football playoff selection committee. So you'd be flying, and then you eventually got the phone call, and you had a very good flight on your way to one of these meetings. I'm just wondering, what are those meetings like? Because we all see the rankings come out last night, and people are like, oh, is this done to get a reaction out of people? You've been a part of those meetings. How do you kind of describe that scene inside the college football playoff committee war room, I guess you could say?
Well, what I would tell you is that, everybody's focused. Everybody has different opinions, and we all come to the conclusion at the end about, what's the right thing. And we get criticized a lot, but, at the end of the day, I think the work of that committee in the 10 years that they've been out there, their work at the end of the year, and everybody reacts to the first one, but their work at the end of the year always proves to be pretty solid.
What's been your reaction to the scandal that has hit college football right now with this Michigan sign stealing scheme right now?
Well, look, I mean, I don't know what to say to that, because you don't know the facts and you don't know everything that's out there. And certainly, when the dust settles, I think we can all have our own opinions. But I know Ward Manuel is a good man at Michigan and the athletic director. And as always, he'll do the right thing. And we'll let the NCAA and the Big Ten figure out, all of that and where that goes.
All right. Before we let you run, we now live in a world where it's like you only get tickets on your phones. Like I go to a Super Bowl now and I go, I missed the big ticket. You go to a big game and you don't get those tickets. So it's neat what you guys are doing with this commemorative ticket for this season and also the 100th season and Coach Prime's first season. So tell people a little bit more about it.
Well, there's the ticket right there.
Oh, nice.
That's the first one. So we have a different one for every game. And with it being the 100th year of Folsom Field and the beginning of Coach Prime era, we thought it was important to have a hard ticket that our fans could get. And we think there'll be a lot of interest in that. We have a different person on the ticket each game, and there's different former athletes that are on that. And then there's some history behind that game that's on the back of that ticket. So the people that want to buy those tickets, we're making them available on our website, because old people like me like to have things in hard form. So we're excited about that ticket, and I think our fans will really enjoy having these tickets from this year.
Last thing I'll ask you, no one really knew what to expect from this team this season. When you get off to a 3-0 start, people expect a bowl game. Now you're 4-4 with 4 games remaining. If you don't win 2 more and you don't get bowl eligibility, would you consider this year a disappointment?
No. I think this year, Coach brought a team together in a short period of time, and I think what he's done already has been significant. And I think what we'll do in the next 4 games and in recruiting will set us up again for the next year. And, we're going to go out there every game and expect to win. And if we don't, we'll find out why we didn't, and we'll make the fixes and we'll go on to the next one. But, I'm just excited about the future. I'm excited about these last 4 games, and I believe that we'll be in a bowl game.
All righty. Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much. It's been really fun talking about your program. Excited to see what happens these next 4 games. Hopefully we get a bowl game. And he, of course, is Rick George, the AD at Colorado. Rick, thanks so much for doing this. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Zach.
You got it. There he is, Rick George, the AD from Colorado. Really good conversation with him. And we've got to talk to Coach Prime right when the season started. Now we get a chance to talk to the AD in Rick George. All righty. We will take a break. When we come on back, the college football playoff rankings did come out last night. I'll give you my reaction. The team that's in the number 1 spot, I understand why, but I do not think they're the best team in the country. We'll get into that conversation when we return. Update time first. Here he is, the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
And this report is sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Insurance for motorcycles, boats, and RVs for protection on the road and on the water. See how much you can save at 1-800-PROGRESSIVE and Progressive.com. The Rangers have been in Texas since 1972. and now are 1 win away from their first championship. They take a 3-1 lead over the Diamondbacks into Game 5 tonight in Arizona, and they've won back-to-back games to take a big lead, putting them on the precipice of a title. Catcher Jonah Heim said they're in a special place right now and focused on sealing the deal.
If you would have asked me when I was a kid if I'd be playing in the World Series at all, I'd laugh at your face. But being one way is super special, and we can't let our guard down. We know what they're capable of, and we got to take it one inning, one pitch at a time tomorrow, and hopefully we can finish this off tomorrow.
And the Rangers were one strike away in 2011, but ultimately lost to the Cardinals. The pitching matchup for tonight is Nathan Eovaldi and Zach Gallen, the same two pitchers that opened the series. Texas has won 10 straight postseason games on the road. Bills quarterback Josh Allen did not practice today following the shoulder injury suffered last Thursday. And the Raiders are reportedly going to start Aiden O'Connell and benching Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Jim Rome here, Thursday in the Jungle. NFL insider Tom Pelissero and Notre Dame running back Audric Estime. Plus, What's Your Beef? Thursday, 12 noon Eastern, 9 Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio.
Doesn't take much to make the Pro Bowl now. Tyler Huntley made it last year. Mac Jones has made a Pro Bowl because about 8 or 9 say no. So you know what? Rewind. Proper reaction. Because about 17 quarterbacks will say no and Will Levis will get in. Hey, Derek Carr, you want to go to the Pro Bowl? I got asked? Really? Oh, yeah, I don't feel like doing it. Lamar Jackson, you're a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. Do you want to go? No, I don't feel like it. All right, Deshaun Watson, you play like crap now. You want to go to Pro Bowl? Yeah, sure. Why? Like, Ryan Tannehill. Like, what are we doing, some of these quarterbacks?
This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
It's time to Ask the Pros, where you're the listener gets to ask us a question, and it's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at CBS Sports Radio or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag #AskThePros. Be listening later in the show when we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. 3 things real quickly. Number 1, I don't know if you guys went into the newsroom during the break, but there is a big, and I mean a big bucket of candy. So someone's kid or someone maybe had too much Halloween candy and no one, because they're probably crappy neighbors, came to their Halloween house yesterday to get the candy. They brought a ton of candy into this studio. And I'm shocked that the most candy in terms of the item, the individual item that was available, was a Kit Kat bar. Now that's good for me, as Stu has one right now and he showed it on the stream. I just stuffed my face with 2 Kit Kat bars during the break. But I was looking in that entire bucket. And yesterday I had my number 1 ranking. Kit Kat bar was in the top 5. I think it was actually number 2. But my number 1 ranking was Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And I just feel good about putting that at number 1 because I went through that entire bucket. I could not find 1 Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. So it means to me that people that got into the office earlier in the day, was that you, Stu?
It was not me. It was someone here by the name of Anthony Gallo, who I believe took 5 or 6 Reese's.
That bastard.
He also posted on social media, so that's...
He took all the Reese's?
It assumes that way, yeah. I did not see any Reese's when I got here. Apparently those came later on in the day, and then by the time I looked again, they were gone. So within like a 4-hour span, he took all of them.
Like how you were feeling before the Raiders fired Josh McDaniels. That's how I was feeling. I went to the bucket, and I'm like, oh, there's going to be some good Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And then I said, oh, what is this? Like being a Raiders fan right now? Because there was nothing there. And I had high expectations, and then I was just severely disappointed. So Gallo did a little 5-finger discount, and with that big mid of his, scooped right into that bucket and grabbed all the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. You know, he is selfish. He is really selfish. I love myself some Anthony Gallo, very nice guy, but a selfish pig since he just took all the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. That's not nice. And I've taken him to a baseball game before. You know, I bought him a few drinks. We've had some fun, all that stuff. He didn't think about Zach Gelb in the afternoon. Oh, let me be a good coworker and leave some Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. And also, it's bad office etiquette. Someone was nice enough to bring in free candy. There is an office here that gets going from 6 a.m. and people are here all throughout the day. You got to think about the people that arrive later and not just take all the Reese's peanut butter cups and go up. All you other guys and girls are SOL. You're not surprised though, Samter.
Not only am I not surprised, I mean, you just sound like a whining baby.
Why?
It's Reese's peanut butter cups. You get here first. You get the candy that you want.
I need my
You don't
beauty
get
sleep.
the candy that you want? Suck it up and deal. Get a Kit Kat. Get a Tootsie Roll.
Okay.
Get something else.
That's fine. I know where you
You're
keep
an
all your
adult.
food. I know where you keep all your food, right in that drawer.
You're an adult.
Right in that studio. Right in that desk. I know where you keep all your food. Sometimes when you walk in, when we didn't used to work together, and you're like, oh, I used to bring in all these cookies, or I used to bring in all these chips.
I got fudge. I got some cappuccino fudge and cookies and cream fudge.
Yeah, I've never told you this. You probably just assumed it. But there's a lot of times I walk right in that newsroom, and Samter, because that is, I don't want to say that's your assigned space, but you have marked your territory. Everyone knows that's where you sit.
Yeah, anyone who tries to sit there gets a tongue lashing.
But there is usually a rule of thumb in radio. If something's out in the open when it comes to food, you expect that to not be there the next day. And I don't know if it's maybe because you're watching your figure, which I don't think you need to do, let me be clear. But with that being said, there's a lot of times where you leave some food out. And you brought in some good things. Trader Joe's you shop at a lot. I like what Samter brings into the office.
I sure do.
Samter's going to get like a lock on that. He's going to bolt lock it so I can't get into all of his food items.
Everything's going into my locker.
Yeah, very, very disappointed with Anthony Gallo. I thought more of him as a human being and also a friend.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong. Hey, we all make bad decisions. I made a bad decision trusting Gallo. Number 2, World Series last night. Maybe this is because I'm an old soul, and maybe this is because I'm not a huge fan now of how baseball is played, and I liked it better when it was my first true love growing up as a kid. And I know this is not the first time it's happened, but to have a bullpen game in the World Series, and I know you could get like, I don't know, your Ken Rosenthal's of the world or whoever the writers are now that are like, oh, well, it's just part of the way that the game's played and I'm always going to defend Major League Baseball, blah, 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 blah. And maybe Rosenthal's not the right name because, you know, he did lose his job because he was critical of that fraud of a commissioner and Rob Manfred, who is one more Rangers win away from giving out that piece of metal that he calls the commissioner trophy. And he is the worst public speaker ever out of all the commissioners in Rob Manfred. And I can't wait to see him just mess up the entire ceremony whenever he gives out the World Series trophy to the Rangers. But I don't know about you, Samter. I know there's not a lot of juice and buzz with this World Series. I don't want to take away, if you're a Rangers fan, this is the greatest time to be alive. But it was very disappointing last night when you're watching the World Series and I see like Miguel Castro, who used to be a Met, coming out of the pen to pitch up against Travis Jankowski. If you would have told me that either of those guys would have been in the World Series, let alone going up against one another, I would have never believed it. And actually, Jank had a good game last night. But having a bullpen game in the World Series, very, very disappointing, if you do ask me. And that's something that shouldn't happen. It's crazy that you get to the World Series and you're like, oh, we got to go with the bullpen game. And the guy that they would have started, who had like a 6 ERA, he came out of the pen and for like 3 innings, he did a good job for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So those are just some housekeeping items that I had to take care of. World Series, don't like a bullpen game. Gallo, keep your fat hands and your fat fingers off the Reese's peanut butter cups and actually have a little bit of a benevolent bone in your body and leave us some Reese's peanut butter cups next year for Halloween. All righty. College football playoff rankings last night. I'm not surprised that the committee put Ohio State as the number 1 team in the country. I understand to some extent why they put Ohio State the number 1 team in the country. It's because they beat Penn State. Penn State's ranked 11th, and then they also beat Notre Dame in F15. So you have 2 top 15 wins. Now, if you go back to those games, Notre Dame should have won it. They only had 10 guys on the field at the end. That's their own fault. Give credit to Ohio State. They took advantage of it. But prior to that, Notre Dame dropped an easy interception. So Ohio State was lucky to win that game. Now, the game against Penn State, Ohio State was clearly the better team. They had the better defense. Maserati Marv, as Gus Johnson calls him, is the best non-quarterback in the country. But when I watch Kyle McCord, my biggest concern for Ohio State is I don't think he's going to be able to put it all together in the biggest game of the season. I don't believe Ohio State is the best team in the country. I understand why the committee put them there in at number 1, But I do believe, and I've said this before, that right now there's 5 teams better than Ohio State in college football this year. In no order, Florida State, Michigan, Georgia, and then the 2 Pac-12 teams in Washington and Oregon. And isn't it funny to me where the Ohio State fans are going to tell you, well, we have 2 top wins in the top 15. Well, like Washington, I know they haven't won pretty the last 2 weeks, but you have Georgia in it too, and Georgia's had some games that haven't been pretty wins this year against opponents. Washington does have a victory against the team that was ranked in there at number 6, which is Oregon. And Oregon just beat the snot out of Utah, which is in at 18. So it's like, I look at the rankings, they're never consistent. If you're going to tell me Ohio State is in at 1 because they have 2 top 15 wins, then how is a team that's undefeated in Washington and a team in Washington that plays right now in the preeminent conference in college football for this season in the Pac-12 not at least bare minimum in the top 4? That just doesn't make sense to me. And don't give me this nonsense, oh, well, they struggled the last 2 weeks. We see a lot of teams struggle. They still won the damn game. So ultimately, I do think Georgia and Michigan, just for starters, will leapfrog Ohio State. I do believe Georgia's going to go undefeated, win the SEC. I think Michigan's going to go undefeated. They'll beat Penn State. They'll beat Ohio State. They'll win the Big Ten championship game. So you have Georgia, Michigan 1 and 2. Whoever wins the Pac-12, assuming if it's between Washington and Oregon, they deserve to be in the college football playoff. I think the committee, though, sent the message to Florida State. Because Florida State, who I like a lot, and I think Jordan Travis is incredible, one of the toughest quarterbacks in the country. Mike Norvell is a phenomenal coach. And they beat LSU, who's at 14. I know Clemson's on the top 25. Duke's not in the top 25. So those wins didn't age well. But in the first rankings to be undefeated, and you're in at 4, and you have some teams behind you like Washington and Oregon that could easily leapfrog you. I think the committee basically said last night to Florida State, you don't win out. You don't win the ACC as an undefeated champion. It's not a lock that you're going to make the college football playoff. Because some did say, all right, 1 loss, you win the ACC, they'll still get in. I don't know if that's going to be the case. So it's going to be exciting to see how this does pan on out. But those 6 teams, 1 through 6, even if they got the order wrong, I do think they are the 6 best teams in college football. It's just funny, and this is why we love college football, and I get why the committee put Ohio State 1, but if I was doing the rankings, I would have put Ohio State 6 because I think the teams that were right after them, 2 through 6, are better than them with what I've watched this year.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
How we doing? Hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. The big news of the day, Josh McDaniels, David Ziegler out as the head coach and general manager of the Las Vegas Raiders. And Stu is the happiest I've ever seen him. Samter, you worked with Stu for a long time. I don't think outside of one other time I've ever seen Stu come into this office and be so giddy, be so elated, and just be so excited to come to work. There's only one other time I could recall where Stuart Kovacs really had like a big smile on his face. But this is right up there. This is a top 2 moment, and it puts us all in a better mood. Like, we're at times a dysfunctional family here at CBS Sports Radio, but I like to say that we're one big happy family. And with families, there's always going to be fighting. There'll be people taking shots at other people, friendly fire, all that stuff. But it just puts me in a better mood when I get to see Stu smiling. And that's what we get today, because Stu is a long-suffering Raider fan, and there's not a lot of things to look forward to when you are a Raider fan. And he finally got that wish that he never thought was going to happen this year. And he thought he was going to be stuck with McDaniels for one more year. And maybe, some are saying this. I'm not saying it, but some are saying it. Mark Davis was listening to the show yesterday. He is a friend of Big Mike CBS, Michael Samter. I saw them hanging out in Las Vegas right at the NFL draft a few years ago. And I heard that Mark Davis was maybe listening to this show, and he didn't like that I said he'd be the biggest buffoon in the NFL if he continues to employ one Josh McDaniels. And boom, right in the middle of the night, after trade deadline day too, which is crazy. So Ziegler and McDaniels are running the team during trade deadline day, where you could have traded some players and got some resources back. Snip, snip. You're out. You're both gone. Here are your pink slips, and you get sent packing. But very good, Samter, you would agree, for Stuart Kovacs.
Stu's happy. I've seen him happier. I mean, whether it's the Lakers winning a championship in the bubble or Notre Dame with a couple big wins. I've seen, you know what, when Stu's the happiest is when Liverpool has a big win, right? There's nothing, I think, outside of, he loves the Raiders, he loves Notre Dame, he loves the Lakers, but I don't see that passion for them that I see, even with the Yankees, that I do with Liverpool. Now, I might be wrong that Liverpool's your number one, but it's right up
he's
there.
right. Mike's right.
But it's because it's a new love. You've been tortured for so many years, but outside of Lakers, by most of your sports teams, where they get to certain places and then they lose. Now, I'm not a soccer guy. I can't tell you a damn thing about soccer other than Samter's wearing some scarf today from some soccer team that was just created, and they sent him that. So that's a nice scarf that you're wearing. And I was in Barcelona, and I got an FC Barcelona hat and scarf. But that doesn't mean that I support the team. I just want it to be controversial. Grab some soccer gear, post a photo of it. People go, oh, that's the team you root for, blah, blah, blah. And Bill Ryder actually reached out to me, and I found out that his favorite vacation spot is Barcelona. He's a big fan of, FC Barcelona?
FC Barcelona.
I think so.
That's my favorite non-English football team as well.
So who's your soccer team? Liverpool?
That'd be Liverpool, yes.
They're good. That sounds like a good soccer team.
Yeah.
And I've heard about Liverpool before.
Yeah, they're historically good. It's like them and Manchester United and Arsenal, like, are the three like English teams that have like the most success.
When did your fandom start?
Like 5 years ago.
Have they won a championship or whatever it's called?
Yes, in the first year I followed them, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if if Stu started to jump on the ship and the next thing you know, they got relegated.
No, they're too good to be relegated, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But the amount of money that some of these other teams are spending, Liverpool, it's challenging for them to contend. But this scarf right here, this is Wrexham. This is they were a fifth-level soccer team that was bought by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and now they're moving up the charts. They're crushing it.
Oh,
so I'm a big fan. They have a show on FX. I love it, and I'm a big Wrexham fan.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All righty, soccer talk.
Yeah,
Gotta
man.
love it. Well, Stu's still wondering, what's the other time that Gelb's talking about?
I was wondering that, yes.
I think it's an obvious one. I think it's lovey-dovey when you started dating your now longtime girlfriend.
I thought this was a specific like sports. Okay, that my mind wasn't going there, but that's fair.
Now, I saw a different Stu. I knew Stu, or sort of knew Stu, and I guess I was his boss at some low AM radio station that I didn't even know Stu was an employee of mine until I got here, and he was like, oh, Zach Gelb, I know you from 920 AM The Jersey. I'm like, I didn't even know that anybody listened to that show when I was on 920 AM The Jersey when I was fresh out of college. He's like, oh, I didn't listen. I was just working there. So I've known Stu a little bit, and I don't think Stu's ever looked bad. But Stu starts dating the girl. Stu gets in impeccable shape. Stu's smiling all the time. You put your head together. We all know what's going on behind closed doors, but that's the happiest I've ever seen Stu. Then, and Josh McDaniels getting fired. Did you wake your girlfriend up? Because I know you guys live together.
Did not. No.
You didn't?
Did not.
Would she have been mad at you if you woke her up in the middle of the night? Hey, babe, Josh McDaniels got fired.
Yeah, she wouldn't be happy with that.
Is she a big Raiders fan?
She's a Jets fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, she could relate to coaches.
She could relate, but I don't know if that's like wake up worthy.
All righty, so I see the news last night, and as I said, I was surprised, even though it was the right move. Then from there, you start to say, okay, I feel good for Stu, and now how are they going to get it right? Because Mark Davis is still the owner of this team. And I know people tweet you all the time, oh, he's got to sell the team. You got to get rid of the owner. That usually does not happen. You need some controversy. You need something off the field, something really bad to happen for probably Mark Davis to consider selling the team. So in all likelihood, Mark Davis isn't going anywhere anytime soon. With that being said, he could get this right if he goes about this the right way and trusts others. And as I said earlier, Jim Harbaugh should be on his list. Ben Johnson, the OC for the Lions, should be on his list. And then also Lou Anarumo should be on his list as well, the Bengals defensive coordinator. But with that being said, just because I give you three names doesn't mean everyone else are going to have the same names. So earlier this morning, I did wake up and I popped on my favorite morning show on national radio. And that, of course, is Maggie and Perloff. Look at me being a good company guy, a good teammate on many of these same CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and, of course, streaming on YouTube And you guys both know Maggie Gray and Andrew Perloff, they were in this time slot before they moved to mornings when DA left. So I saw a poll question of theirs, and I also heard the segment, and they said, who should run the Raiders? And they gave 3 names: Tom Brady, Deion Sanders, and Jim Harbaugh. Now, I understand why all 3 of those names are on the list. Jim Harbaugh, currently embroiled in controversy with Michigan. Maybe they're going to give him a new extension. You see different reports each and every day. Either way, we know that Jim Harbaugh has 1 foot in, 1 foot out at Michigan. He has been contemplating a return to the NFL. The last 2 years, he basically begged and interviewed for 11, 12 hours with the Minnesota Vikings and then didn't get the job. Last year, he had 1 interview. It was with the Denver Broncos, I'm pretty sure. He didn't get that job. So whatever it is, there's been 2 hiring cycles where Jim Harbaugh has displayed interest and could leave Michigan in a good spot because even though with the pending scandal, there may be some sanctions coming their way, but from a public perception, he has now beat Ohio State twice. People said that would never happen. And he's won 2 Big Ten championships. People said he would never win a Big Ten championship. So depending on what the reaction is from the NCAA and the Big Ten, and I'm going to expect that they move like snails, because that's what they do. And that's why I think it's laughable when I watch all these shows and they're like, oh, the Big Ten needs to step in right now. The NCAA needs to step in right now. The precedent has been the NCAA moves as slow as humanly possible. Like, think of the person that cannot run the most that you know and who's in like the worst shape. That's the NCAA. And you better not be thinking about me, but there is a chance that you may be thinking about me. But actually, fun fact about Zach
I bet you're
Gelb.
sneaky fast.
Fun fact, I've actually have run 5 5Ks in my life. I ran 5 5Ks in my life. That's how I used to get into shape for football season in the summer when I would go to sleepaway camp. So I've participated in 5 5Ks. Now, don't ask for my time because I don't remember my time. And I'm sure my time wasn't good. But, yeah, I used to run a few 5Ks.
Why don't you throw a half marathon in there?
No, that's not going to happen. Do I look like Tiki Barber?
No, that's a full marathon. Just do half of that.
Fine. Do I look like David Shepard?
That's also full marathons. I've done half. Do you look like Mike Samter?
I will never forget Shep doing the New York City Marathon. This was 3 years ago. Then after the marathon, runs to work, sweating like a pig. He smelled so bad. And he comes to work his shift for Ion Football. And I'm like, dude, why do you look like you're out of breath? Why do you stink? And why do you look like you haven't taken a shower in about 45 days? He looked like he was in Castaway, screaming, Wilson, with the ball and all that. That is what Shep looked like.
That's amazing because I've run 4 half marathons, and afterwards I can't walk for at least a full day. And that's a half of a marathon,
take an Uber,
and I can't
take a
walk.
subway.
And he's going and sprinting to work and working. I don't get it.
And by the way, he beat Tiki Barber's time. Now, Tiki was coming from like a game or something, and, you know, he got no sleep, and he had to get an escort to the from the airport because his flight was delayed. He had to drive. There was like a whole big story about that. But anyway, getting back to the topic of conversation here. You could see why Jim Harbaugh's on this list. I could see from Maggie and Perloff's show why Deion Sanders is on this list. But I don't think Deion Sanders in his next job is going to the NFL. And then Tom Brady, it's easy, low-hanging fruit of, oh, Brady, he wants to be the minority owner of the Raiders. I don't know what the status is of that. I don't think he's been approved yet. And there's been some reports that there's hiccups in his approval process with whatever's going on. But Brady has been around the team. There was a game this year where he was trying to fire up Jimmy Garoppolo, and clearly whatever he said did not work because Jimmy Garoppolo is now benched as the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders, and he's been miserable, and now they're going to turn to the Purdue quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. But also, let me just give you this quote from Tom Brady, and this was from years ago. This is via Zach Cox at Nesson. He said, in a conference call with Bills media today, Brady said he never wants to be a coach. No, certainly not. The question was, do you think you want to coach someday? You sound a lot like Bill Belichick on these conference calls. Coaching wouldn't be for me. No, certainly not. I like playing. I wouldn't be a good coach. I don't have the patience to be a coach. So when I look at this Maggie and Perloff poll of who should run the Raiders, the obvious answer is Jim Harbaugh. Brady's not doing it. Now, Brady could be a minority owner, and that could, I guess, meet the definition of running the Raiders. Like if you put Brady in a GM role and Brady gets to hire the coach, that's a different conversation. Coach Prime, I don't believe he's leaving to go to the NFL. If he leaves, he's going to another college. And then you have Jim Harbaugh, who out of those three, and even though Brady's the GOAT, I do believe you got to go with Jim if those are your three options. But you don't, like, that's the thing with the Raiders. You don't need to go for the big, sexy name. Like, Stu, if they have a hire that you're like, I don't really know much about that guy. Or if it's a hire where it's like, like Harbaugh, sure, he has the sustained success as a coach in the NFL, 3 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl. But if they go elsewhere and it's a name that you're not really familiar with, I don't necessarily know if that means it's a bad hire. Because how many times did we clown the Eagles for hiring Nick Sirianni? Mike Lombardi. Remember that guy? I know he still works in the media and all that stuff, and he always pretends like, oh, I know everything. I'm the end-all, be-all whenever he opens his mouth. But he said that Doug Peterson was the least qualified coaching hire ever. And he was wrong. Doug won a Super Bowl, and now Doug's doing a good job with the Jaguars. Mike McDaniel, when he got hired by the Dolphins, everyone was like, who? What? And the same was with Nick Sirianni. And look where those guys are now. Remember when Sean McVay was hired? People are like, oh, he comes from a great football family, but you can't hire someone that's like 30 years old. So just because you're not familiar with the name doesn't mean it's the wrong name. And if you are Mark Davis, and all these teams hire search firms, but just because you hire a search firm doesn't mean you listen. Like the Texans a few years ago, they hired a search firm. They recommended a bunch of names for their GM job, and they still hired Nick Caserio, and he wasn't a top 5 candidate. Now, so far for the Texans, I guess that's starting to move in the right direction. But for Mark Davis more than ever, Stu, it's essential, and I think you would agree with this, that he hires a search firm, and you still have to go through the meetings. You're still the owner of the team, but I do believe you really have to lean on this search firm, because if he's independently making this decision, it's going to end in a really wrong way.
Yeah, we've been down that road. The Raiders have been down that road for many of times since he's taken over, and it's really not working out. I mean, I guess Del Rio was fine, but other than that, he's had a lot of misses in terms of, the GM, and I think of the GM too with Mayock and now
Mayock right up the TV desk.
Yeah, so he
to get into fights with Antonio Brown. That was more Antonio Brown's fault. Remember when Brown wanted to punch him?
Yeah.
It's always messy with the Raiders.
Always.
So you want Harbaugh. I agree that's a good name. I've also suggested Lou Anarumo and Ben Johnson. If you can't get Jim Harbaugh, he signs an extension with Michigan, doesn't want to go. Who's the name then that you gravitate towards? Is there anyone that excites you right now? Is all like, it's all these hotshot coordinators. Some of them work, some of them don't.
Amarillo, I think, would be very good. I would be a big fan of that hire. Johnson would be good too. I'd be up for any of those, to be honest.
And I think what makes both attractive is I know it helps when you get Joe Burrow and you got to get the quarterback, you got to get players. But Lou Anarumo gets like no credit for the job that he's done. People are starting to do this on the defensive side of the ball. And the Bengals for a while were in a bad spot where they were stuck on just making the playoffs and could never do anything. And the Lions have been lovable losers for years. And they've changed that culture with Dan Campbell. And Ben Johnson's been a big part of that. So I think guys that have seen the process and have seen how you overturn franchises are guys that you really want to tap into. But ultimately, you got to go get some players. Like, who did this McDaniels Ziegler regime bring in outside of Devontae Adams is a big one, and then Chandler Jones no longer on the team? It's like they kept a lot of the same guys, and they didn't make any other big moves. They get rid of Derek Carr, you bring in Garoppolo? Like, that's what you're doing? That's not improving. So you need a GM and a coach that are going to work together. And it's not brain surgery. You don't need a PhD in football. You got to go get some more talent. You got some talented players. Crosby's stud. Adams, he's going to want out at the end of the year. He wants out right now. And Josh Jacobs, too. There is some talent there, but the rest of the roster, for the most part, is really bad. And I mean really bad. All right, he's Zach Gelb, Show, CBS Sports Radio. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk will join us next.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. Let's welcome in the man behind Pro Football Talk, and that is the always entertaining Mike Florio. kind enough to join us once again on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Mike, always appreciate the time. How you been, my friend?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. So I couldn't sleep last night, and I was actually thankful that that was the case because I see the breaking news report that Josh McDaniels and David Ziegler have been fired. I was wondering if they would be back next year just because of where the contract was for both. So when you got wind of that news and you had the immediate reaction, what was it?
Well, I woke up this morning and I looked at my phone because we have a thread of text messages among the writers at PFT. And I saw that and my eyes didn't want to focus. And it's like, what in the world happened? I was stunned because, the question isn't should Josh McDaniels have been fired? The question is, should he have been hired in the first place? If you're not willing to be patient with someone who is bringing the Patriot way to town, you shouldn't bring the Patriot way to town. We saw it with Matt Patricia in Detroit. We saw it with McDaniels when he went to Denver. We saw it again with McDaniels in Las Vegas. It takes time to get the kinds of players that submit to the way things work. It's got a military overtone to it. The players check their individuality at the door. There's a certain type of player you're looking for. You rip anyone, you rip everyone. It pisses a lot of guys off, and it doesn't work if you don't win. But I thought Mark Davis, between the buyout he had to give John Gruden a couple of years ago, reality of a buyout with McDaniels and Ziegler, that would keep Davis from doing something now. And the one thing I'd love to know, who's advising him? Who whispered into his ear that this is what he should do? And did Tom Brady have a role in this? A guy who's trying to buy a piece of the team. Did he say to Davis, yeah, go ahead, fire my good friend Josh McDaniels. I think it's in the best interest of the team.
Mike Florio here with us on the Zach Gelb Show. It's an interesting thought that you bring up. And the way that I look at this right now is, okay, you made the move to get rid of McDaniels. I don't have a problem with it. And I thought it was the right move to fire him now. But is Mark Davis going to get the next hire right? So you talk about advising. Let's say if Mark Davis called you up and said, what the heck should I do? What would you say to him?
Well, you make a great point because Davis is the problem. And as Jed York, the 49ers CEO, said several years ago when his team was in the midst of a run of dysfunction, you can't fire the owner. That's the problem. If the owner's unfit, there isn't a damn thing you can do about it other than hope he sells or wait for him to die. That's it. That's your only option. You're stuck as a fan. So the same guy that brought us all the way back to, 2011 with Hugh Jackson. It's been one bad hire after another, and it's been one bad move after another. He had Jack Del Rio. Team went to the playoffs. And then, he gets a chance to bring back John Gruden. Works behind Del Rio's back to line up a deal with John Gruden. Fires Jack Del Rio. John Gruden in round 2 didn't do anything. Was like 22 wins out of 53 games.
Yeah, overrated.
And then Rich Bisaccia takes the team to the playoffs as the interim coach and doesn't give him another chance. So I don't trust Davis to make a good decision. My advice to any owner would be, number one, have people around you who are giving you advice that is real and that you trust, and they aren't just telling you what you want to hear. But number two, take your time. Have no preconceived notions. Look as broadly as you can. Turn over every stone and force yourself to not even begin to make a decision until you've talked to everyone that you believe you should talk to, until you've investigated everyone you believe you should investigate. Because too many times, an owner knows right away, and I wouldn't be surprised if Davis already knows who he wants next. They know right away who they want. That's who they're going to get. And they don't look more broadly at everything out there because they may be missing one or two or more candidates better than the one that they plan to hire right out of the gates.
Talking to Mike Florio right now. So last night I was thinking who should be on their list. And I went through 3 names right away. Jim Harbaugh, Lou Anarumo, and then also Ben Johnson. If you had to make an early prediction on who you think it will be, what's your call?
Well, Harbaugh makes sense. He started his coaching career with the Raiders 20 years ago as a very low-level assistant before he began working his way up the ranks. You have to ask yourself conceptually, do you want a defensive coach and then you have an offensive coordinator who's working with your quarterback, whoever your quarterback's going to be? Let's say they finished badly enough this year that they are in position to get a great quarterback. So you have an offensive coordinator who's joined at the hip with your quarterback, and it works so well. Oh, your offensive coordinator's gone now. He's a head coach somewhere else. You got to find another one. Look at what the Bills have gone through post Brian Daboll. Ken Dorsey may not be the guy. And they'd be better off if Daboll would have been the head coach. Now, I know it didn't line up that way, but if you have an offensive head coach, he's the guy who's tied to your quarterback. If it goes well, you don't have to worry about the guy who coached the quarterback leaving. So that's a decision, a conceptual decision Mark Davis has to make. And, what we see all too often is the next coach is the exact opposite of the last one. So
good point.
We got a fairly young offensive coordinator. Well, now Lou Anarumo makes sense because he's the exact opposite of Josh McDaniels. I hope that doesn't happen. Jim Harbaugh is a proven winner at the NFL level. My concern is, as we get deeper down this rabbit hole with whatever is happening at Michigan, it's a horrible look for Harbaugh. How do you sell him to your fan base, to your customers, to the media that covers your team, if the end result of this is either he knew what was going on and he's lying about it, or it was so pervasive, only Mr. Magoo wouldn't know what was happening? I don't know which is worse if you're a big-time college coach trying to get back into the NFL. His track record at San Francisco is proven. I just think that we need to see how this investigation goes into sign stealing before we come to any conclusion as to whether it'd be attractive to an NFL team.
But like you just said, should that sign stealing investigation even matter? Like, that's what's going on in college. In the NFL, all right, he's been to 3 NFC championship games in 4 years with the Niners and got to a Super Bowl. If I'm a Raiders fan, that's all I care about, is that this dude was a winner in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think at a certain point it becomes such a bad look. If the cheating is that blatant and that orchestrated and that pervasive, it just undermines the guy. And I just want to see how far it goes. And there was a report over the weekend on the NFL's in-house website, I believe, handed to guys on the payroll from the NFL, that if there's a suspension imposed on Harbaugh by the NCAA, the league might do the same thing, even though there's no rule to support it. I mean, the classic NFL, make it up as we go, antitrust violation, collusion, whatever. And I think the timing was to get the word out there now for anybody who's thinking about Jim Harbaugh. Hey, be aware. If you hire this guy, he may get suspended. So consider that as you put together your roster of potential coaches as you get closer and closer to the spinning of the carousel. I mean, for me, if it's even remotely close and I got one candidate that I know comes in free and clear with no suspension, and the other one that may get suspended for as long as the NCAA suspends him, I'm not touching that guy. Yeah. So I think that's the other practical impediment as well to hiring a Jim Harbaugh.
Mike Florio, I'm just wondering. So you have the Raiders, they blink first, they get rid of McDaniels. I think the Commanders at the end of the year, if not sooner, will say goodbye to Ron Rivera. I got to think the Bears are going to move on from Eberflus after this season. Are those the only two other jobs that you think maybe, like I do, are locks to see their coach leave and get fired at the end of this year? Or are there other jobs that you kind of look at and say, yeah, I'd be surprised if their head coach is back next season?
We got a lot of football still to be played. So I don't know. Like, the Cowboys could fall apart in a way that would get Mike McCarthy fired, frankly, in Dallas. I don't know. Did you mention Brandon Staley?
No, I didn't. And that's definitely one that should be on the list.
Yeah. So, and Sean McDermott in Buffalo, if they don't make the playoffs, they're 5-3. And they had 3 straight games where they were dominant. They've had 4 really bad games since then. And somehow they won 2 of them. And they won 2 of them thanks in part to uncalled pass interference at the very end of the game against the Giants on an untimed down and against the Buccaneers on a Hail Mary where Cade Otton was taken out by 2 guys and it wasn't called. So that's not the kind of dominance that you want to see from the Buffalo Bills. We'll see what they do Sunday in Cincinnati. But I think there's a way it falls apart for the Bills, for McDermott to be out. And I think Bill Belichick. I don't know if did you mention him?
No, I think he'll be back. You don't?
Well, here's what I think is going to happen. And, I'm hearing chatter to this effect, not that it's reporting, but when you're plugged into the NFL grapevine and you hear something like this, it's too good to keep to yourself. There's a theory out there that when the season ends, Josh Harris, the new owner of the Commanders, is going to call the Patriots and inquire about what it would take to get Bill Belichick. So the Patriots wouldn't fire him. The Patriots would essentially trade him to Washington and avoid any further financial obligation, get something back. Remember, they had to give up some stuff to get him when he was the Jets head coach for like a day in 2000. And so there's a thought out there that that's how this is going to go. Everybody goes in Washington. Josh Harris makes a play for Bill Belichick, and Bob Kraft does not say no to it because he, in theory, is ready to move on as well.
That would be juicy, to say the least, Mike Florio.
Yes, it would. Oh, yes, it would. And I don't know. And again, Josh Harris had better be ready to give Bill Belichick an extended runway to turn it around. He can't get halfway into the second season and say it's not working. I'm going to fire Bill Belichick. And the wild card in anything that the Commanders do, Zach, is Magic Johnson. Because even though he only owes 4% of the team, his megaphone is bigger than 4%. And he'll tweet, he'll talk. He acts like he's a co-owner. And some of the media coverage makes it look like he's the primary owner of the team. So he's got a loud voice. He's been empowered by Josh Harris to have that voice. What does he think? And what's he going to think the first time he sees Bill Belichick and he flashes that $1 million smile and Belichick grumble and, disrespects him if he would? I don't know that he would, but with Belichick, you never know what you're going to get. So they better be sure they're ready for his personality and that they're ready for it to take some time for Belichick to get the Patriot way in Washington. And the one thing we know about the Patriot way doesn't work if you don't have a quarterback. Patriot way worked as well as it did for as long as it did because they had Tom Brady. None of the other coaches who have been part of the Belichick tree have panned out because you don't have a quarterback.
Before we let you run, Mike Florio, Kirk Cousins with the Achilles. I know you're a Vikings fan. I think this is it for him in Minnesota, regardless of what they say the other day. I keep on looking at San Francisco with the way that Shanahan rotates through quarterbacks and how much he loves Kirk Cousins. Have tried to get him in the past to San Francisco. Would you put a few dollars down that Kirk Cousins is the 49ers quarterback next year?
Well, we wrote after the Monday night game 9 days ago that Kirk Cousins gave Kyle Shanahan something to think about. Because I thought, look, as long as Brock Purdy stays healthy, he's the guy. He's the young Kirk Cousins. Because Cousins is one of the oldest quarterbacks in the NFL. He'll be 36 next August. I disagree with you, though. I thought going into the season, this was Cousins last year, and that after the season, the Vikings were going to do whatever they had to do to position themselves to draft a franchise quarterback and get their first long-term starter at the position since Fran Tarkenton. The closest they had was Dante Culpepper, who was the starter from 2000 to 2005, had a horrible knee injury in Carolina, and that was it for him in Minnesota. I think this Achilles injury has the opposite effect. I think it cements his future. I think it strengthens the bond between him and Kevin O'Connell and the organization. He had his surgery today in Minnesota. He has the picture from the hospital bed with a purple wrap on his leg. I think he sets aside the opportunity to go make money elsewhere. And what's his market now coming off of the torn Achilles when he had a great season that was interrupted?
You're not wrong.
2 days before Halloween. I think it strengthens the likelihood he's back in Minnesota. They ride this out, see what they've got with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, maybe draft a running back who can come in and be a difference maker. The defense is better. Brian Flores probably isn't going to be a head coach next year because he's got that lawsuit against the NFL. Tough to argue that someone should hire him, although it shouldn't matter. We know how the world works. I doubt that any other team is going to make him a head coach while this other lawsuit's pending. So the defense will be better next year. I think Cousins is back, and I think the Vikings are better next year than they were last year.
Hey, by the way, Mike Florio, when you say that there's a lot of football left, do you have any belief, I'm not saying for this year, but maybe long-term that LaFleur and Love will figure this thing out in Green Bay?
Well, I don't know how much time a quarterback gets now. When I was a kid and first discovered football, Terry Bradshaw was in year 3 and didn't seem to know what the hell he was doing, but he got to do it long enough to become a Super Bowl champion. Is 2 years what you get now? And if 2 years is what you get, Jordan Love gets the rest of this year and next year. He sat on the bench for 3 years. And remember, they redid his contract as they were approaching the 5th-year option date. So they kind of did a split where they committed to him, but not for long term. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option, but he's getting some good money. I think you got to give him another year and see what happens. And the other thing that helps him, no owner in Green Bay.
Yeah,
it's
big
corporate.
point.
And they've made these decisions. They're all in with their plan. They got to ride this out. And there isn't that one person that can roll out of bed any given day, like Mark Davis did apparently yesterday, and say, enough, I can do whatever I want when I want. You don't have that in Green Bay, which makes it easier to stick with the status quo.
Tell me before we let you run about On Our Home and all the proceeds you're donating, and it's a great job by you to a local animal shelter.
Here it is. It's a book I wrote during Christmas season 2021. Basically started it right after Thanksgiving and finished it right after the first of the year. It's a story idea that I had rattling around in my head for a while. It's a Christmas story. It's a ghost story. It's somewhere at the intersection of A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life. It's fundamentally about family relationships, fractured family relationships, the importance of mending those relationships, especially during the holidays. And if it's too late to mend the relationship because the person is gone or the relationship is irrevocably broken, coming to terms with that and moving forward if you just can't fix that relationship, if you've blown your window to do so. But my hope is, we posted it on the website last year, kind of like an advent calendar, 1 chapter per day. And I got some great feedback from people that really made a difference for them. It inspired them to mend a relationship. And I hope that's what happens. And every dollar I make, every penny I make goes to the Humane Society of Harrison County, West Virginia, which is a no-kill shelter that provides care and feeding for dogs and cats awaiting their next home. So hopefully people will buy it and read it and try it. I think it's good. I have a clear bias that I freely admit, but I do think it's good. I hope people enjoy it. And I'm not getting any of the money from it. So it's not going into my pockets. If anything, it's going to cost me money because I'm paying the taxes on it. And I'm just going to give the pre-tax up to $10,000. I'm giving the pre-tax amount to the Humane Society, and I'll pay the taxes on it. It's too hard to figure it out otherwise. And I don't want to get audited, so I'd rather do it that way.
But you know what? I'm on the website right now. I will buy one, and I will add to that fund for you a little bit for the donation. So I appreciate you jumping on board today. Continue the great work with NBC and Pro Football Talk. We always appreciate when you join us.
All right. Thank you, Zach.
There you go. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk. A lot to react to from there, especially about that Bill Belichick rumor. We'll get into some of that when we return after these short messages. But first up with the latest CBS Sports Radio update, here's the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flag.
We had our first coaching change last night coming from the Las Vegas Raiders, of course. But not only did they have a coaching change, but are also changing quarterbacks with Aiden O'Connell set to start Sunday against the Giants. The Falcons have benched Desmond Ridder and they're starting Taylor Heineke this weekend against the Vikings, who are going with Jaron Hall after the injury to Kirk Cousins. Josh Allen sat out Bills practice today due to a shoulder injury suffered last Thursday, and Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford also not practicing due to a sprained thumb. The Rangers 1 win away from their first championship. They have a 3-1 series lead going into tonight's Game 5 in Arizona. Manager Bruce Bochy isn't going to look too far ahead.
The only thing I'm thinking tomorrow, we get to come out and play our best game. I don't mean to cliche that, but it is. That's how you look at it. You don't look where you're at. Your focus has to be on tomorrow's game, going out there and doing all you can to win a ball game. And that's where we have to be thinking. That's where our minds have to be.
The Rangers have won a record 10 straight road playoff games. It'll be Nathan Eovaldi on the mound going up against Zach Gallen. I'm Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio is everywhere, at home, in your car, and of course on your phone and tablet. Find us on your local affiliate, SiriusXM Channel 158, or the free Odyssey app.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio.
Talking to Jordan Travis right now. If you guys had to build this thing from all the way down and now you guys are getting to a pretty high level, do you remember some of the negative things that were said about your program a few years ago?
That's one thing with me, man. I don't forget anything at all. I remember hearing that I can only play running back, I can only play receiver. I remember hearing that the offensive line, we need to get a whole new offensive line and wipe all the guys out. I remember everything, man. But it just kind of gives you that drive and that push every single day is when you're not feeling great. It's kind of like that chip on our shoulder that you need, and I absolutely love it. I'm not really worried about proving other people wrong. I'm always worried about proving myself right, and that's something that I've always believed in. My brother taught me that from a young age.
This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Mike Florio, the man behind Pro Football Talk, just joined us a few moments ago, and he gave a pretty big nugget here. This was Mike Florio on the possibility of the Commanders, yes, the Washington Commanders, trading for Bill Belichick.
Here's what I think is going to happen. You know, I'm hearing chatter to this effect Not that it's reporting, but when you're plugged into the NFL grapevine and you hear something like this, it's too good to keep to yourself. There's a theory out there that when the season ends, Josh Harris, the new owner of the Commanders, is going to call the Patriots and inquire about what it would take to get Bill Belichick. So the Patriots wouldn't fire him. The Patriots would essentially trade him to Washington and avoid any further financial obligation, get something back. And so there's a thought out there that that's how this is going to go.
So a few things to that. I believe it. Now, just because I believe it doesn't mean it's going to happen, because that means that Robert Kraft would say, okay, I'm willing to trade my legendary coach in Bill Belichick. But what happens at the end of the year? Because I know a lot of people are trashing Belichick now. Oh, he's nothing without Brady. I do believe people forget the origins of Tom Brady. Like, it's incredible that Belichick even kept Brady on the roster. And then he had a $100 million highest paid quarterback in Drew Bledsoe, who gets hurt. Bledsoe is ready to come back during the season after a terrible injury after that hit from Mo Lewis in that game up against the Jets. And Belichick stuck with Drew Bledsoe. And then in that AFC championship, or stuck with Tom Brady. And then in that AFC championship game, Bledsoe comes in because Brady gets hurt with an ankle injury. And remember, there was not 2 weeks in between the Super Bowl because the season was put on pause for a week because of 9/11. So coming off that ankle injury, and you have the face of your team and also the highest paid quarterback in the league, Drew Bledsoe, who was healthy and just scored a big touchdown in the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh up against the Steelers, Belichick rolled and informed Bledsoe, I've talked to Drew about it before, like the Wednesday night before the game, that they were gonna ride with Brady. And then after that, Brady went from a game manager and a system quarterback to becoming the system. And he was clutch, don't get me wrong. Drove down the field against the Rams. Drove down the field in a high-octane offense after missing the playoffs the year before that against the Panthers. Then won another Super Bowl. But in the first wave of those Patriot Dynasty teams, it was really more, okay, you have this golden boy Tom Brady. How great could he be even though he's winning? But a lot of the credit went to Belichick and the defense. And then once 2007 happened, that's when the offense started to get more of the credit. But even in the second wave, they've won because of their offense. Falcons game, coming back from down 28-3, that was Brady. And then in that Rams Super Bowl, the second time, that was because of defense. Patriots only put up 13 points in the game. So I've always said Brady deserves more of the credit than Belichick. And Belichick will even say it. Every time they win a championship, it's all about the players. Players win championships. That's what Bill always says. But now, because Bill hasn't been able to win without Brady, doesn't mean Bill's this bum. So I do believe Bill would still be attractive if he's made available. But Mike even said it, later in that answer. Bill needs to get a quarterback because that goes for any coach in this league. You don't have sustained success in this league if you don't have a quarterback. So the way I look at Bill Belichick's future in New England, I do think for the first time, it's unknown. I would still lean that he's back, but does he want to stay? And if Belichick goes to Kraft and says, I want to go elsewhere, I do believe Kraft will say, okay, but it's going to go down the way that Florio just said, where it's going to come via a trade, because they're not just going to let Bill walk to any team. So I guess that is a possibility. I would still go, if I had to rank most likely to least likely, Belichick's back next year in New England, and the seat's really warm. 2, he gets traded somewhere else. And then 3, he would get fired from most likely to least likely. I do believe he'll be back next year, but if he's not, I don't think he gets fired. I do think he gets traded. And on the flip side of this, from the Commanders' angle, when you look at these potential jobs they're going to open, the Raiders, they'll probably go for a big splashy name. I just don't know if teams are going to view that as attractive, that situation. But for the first time in forever, the Commanders could actually be talked as an attractive destination because you have that vile pig, Daniel Snyder, no longer owning the team. And Josh Harris is running the show. And you got the Magic Johnson as a minority owner, a part of that ownership group. And Josh Harris is going to have to try to make a big splash. And it's tough to make a bigger splash than arguably the greatest head football coach or one of the greatest head football coaches of all time. So the Raiders' job is already open. The Commanders' job will be open. Maybe they go get Harbaugh. Maybe they go get Belichick in a trade. You know, you could look at some of these names, Ben Johnson or Lou Anarumo. They may be the good hires, but are they splashy? Are they flashy names? Do they elicit a big response? And I think the Commanders is not the best way to run your team. I think they're going to go for a big splash. I really do. Now, the Bears will be open. That's another potential Harbaugh destination. And all these other coordinators that we were mentioning. And they're also going to have 2 really good draft picks. And if the Chargers open up, which I read yesterday, Staley only has a 4-year contract. Standard's usually 5. McDaniels somehow got 6. Staley got 4. He's on year 3 now. So a fear I had was the Spanos family is going to be cheap and keep him around another year for 1 year. And you have to pay 2 coaches at once for 1 year. I don't think that's a big deal. So those are the 4 jobs I really look at. Chargers, Commanders, Bears, and Raiders. Raiders are already open. The other 3, I think, will eventually become open. And if I had to rank them in terms of if I was a candidate, who would I want? Chargers would be 1 because they have so much damn talent. Commanders would be 2 because of the new ownership group. And I think they're going to try to do everything to go build a winner quickly. 3 would be the Bears because of the draft pick. And then 4 would be the Raiders. And it's nothing against their fan base. It's nothing against Las Vegas, right? I love Raiders fans. I would love to be the coach of a team in Las Vegas. But I can't trust the owner in Mark Davis because he's been a dysfunctional hot mess during his tenure, finally getting the team and becoming the owner and the day-to-day person that's leading the operations ever since his father, Al Davis, did pass away. All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll come on back. Jimmy G is bench. What's his future? And also, there's one player today that a lot of people aren't talking about, but there's a lot more pressure on him now. We'll tell you that is next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, rock and roll now at number 3 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. Man, oh man, what a day this has been. So the Raiders late last night, in typical Raider fashion, it's not like you just get rid of someone in the middle of the day. This was vintage, an Al Davis kind of playbook by Mark Davis. It really was. Like, was there a PowerPoint presentation that was going on in the middle of the night? All right, this is why we're firing Josh McDaniels for X, Y, and Z, his BFF David Ziegler as well. But I really chuckled. I said this before. When I got the news last night, I was surprised because I thought with the 6-year contract, this only being year 2, Mark Davis, also how much he had to pay John Gruden to not coach the team, that this was going to be a situation where everyone knew he shouldn't be back, but there was a chance he was going to get back. And when you just got done with the trade deadline, I did not expect that right after that trade deadline expiring a few hours later, Josh McDaniels would get fired. Now, with all that being said, maybe I should change that thinking, and maybe we should look for more of that in the future. Because, right, like logically, it doesn't make sense. You're going to let a GM and a head coach make decisions that could potentially impact your team for the future. Like if David Ziegler saw a player that was available, like would you allow him to give up the second or third round pick for, let's say, if he wanted Montez Sweat or if he wanted Chase Young, or trade away some of your players? Not that I ever thought that Devontae Adams was going to get traded yesterday, but there was at least a conversation about it. So it's wild to me that you have that deadline pass. And it kind of feels almost as if when the draft happens and then you see a GM get fired, he's like, whoa, he was just picking all the players. Or a big scout was fired. Oh, well, he had an influence on some of these decisions. So maybe we should look for more of those deadlines to kind of indicate when a team is going to make a move. But Mark Davis had one move to make. And when you're worth that much money, even though people call you cheap, like to the average person, we all know how much money Mark Davis has compared to all of us. But you have one choice to make. Do you want to continue to be a buffoon? Do you want to continue to be an embarrassment? Or do you want to start to take your team back and try to find a way to get this right? And that's the big thing now. I can't sit here and tell you I'm trusting Mark Davis to get this right. Because Mark Davis, for almost the entirety of his tenure, has got it wrong. And last time when this job was made available, I was not totally against McDaniels' hire, to be fair, because he was deserving of another opportunity, even though in Denver it was a disaster, but that was over a decade ago, with him going back to New England. And I said, okay, I'd be interested in a second chapter. But I remember saying, like, go hire Jim Harbaugh. This was 2 years ago. Or continue to go with Rich Bisaccia. And you even see this in other spots like Carolina. Carolina had Matt Rule. They fired him early in the season. Then they let Steve Wilkes be the interim, and he turned it around. Now, I don't know if that would have worked long term, but when the hire was Frank Reich, it was underwhelming. It was like, that's what you're doing? A guy that just got fired in Indianapolis last year when he was the head coach of Indy, his team did not have one lead at halftime, and the guy could never get a game won in Jacksonville, couldn't beat Tennessee. And it's like, that's the guy that you're bringing in? If it wasn't the slam dunk hire, the Carolina Panthers probably should have stayed with Steve Wilkes. But most of the times, the interim head coach doesn't end up getting the job. So it's a good day for Raiders fans because you get rid of Voldemort, right, to your fan base. You get rid of the man's name that we should not mention in Josh McDaniels because we all knew this was never going to have a good ending. But now it's like, all right, Mark, with your shady haircut, here we go again. Are you going to disappoint Stu again? Are you going to make sad Stu and Stuart Kovacs become a thing once again? Or are you going to find someone, pick the right person, trust that person, and allow them to make the decision with your team on who you should hire? Because not only do you need a new head coach, you need a new general manager. And maybe the head coach is also the GM, or maybe the head coach brings in someone that he trusts as the GM, or you do what most teams do. Not all, but most. You hire the GM, you identify who you want to be the GM, and then you allow that GM to make the hire. Now, Mark Davis's track record, as bad as it is with head coaches, is equally as bad with general managers. Just look at the last two. Mike Mayock and David Ziegler. Huh? Yeah. Those were the two guys that they recently brought in. So, moving on from the coaching component of this and the general managing component of it, and we'll have a long time to break this down. Jimmy G, he gets benched today. And Stu, with all the ways that this could have ended, when you go through it, firing McDaniels and Ziegler in the middle of the night, but it's kind of funny to me that Jimmy G is probably the driving force to why Josh McDaniels doesn't have a job right now. And what I mean by that, because it's McDaniels' fault, he selected Jimmy G to be the quarterback. But a few weeks ago, when it was the decision, do you go with Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer when Jimmy G was hurt, he elected to go with Brian Hoyer, which made no sense. And Aiden O'Connell was, right, a preseason darling, a preseason star. Even though that sounds like an oxymoron because I really don't care what you do in the preseason, but there was some positive momentum with Aiden O'Connell. And then he started a game earlier this year, or he played in a game earlier this year. Was it up against the Chargers still?
Yeah, Chargers, yep.
And, you know, he wasn't great, but it's not like you looked at him and said, oh, I need to go see Brian Hoyer when Jimmy G isn't there. So then Jimmy G comes back. Jimmy G stinks up the joint. And it's like if Jimmy G never got healthy, you probably see more bad Jimmy G, but then you never see Aiden O'Connell get on the field in the first place. And then it's like if Jimmy G never gets hurt, there's never that decision to be made on do you go Hoyer or do you go Aiden O'Connell? And when most in the organization probably thought O'Connell was the right choice when Jimmy G got hurt, it seemed like, in a bizarre way, Jimmy G not staying healthy and Aiden O'Connell not getting that opportunity is probably where the locker room said, with other things too. But that was like the last straw, the straw that broke the camel's back. All right, McDaniels, you think you're the smartest dude in this room. McDaniels, you're not the guy. And when you're in college, and I know McDaniels not a college coach, but you could preach the message, do the whole shtick, my way or the highway. And what I say goes, and you get kids 18, 19, wet behind the ears. They're like, yeah, coach could do no wrong. I love coach. Coach. Whatever you say, that's the gospel. But in the NFL, you have grown men. And when grown men don't believe in you, it's very tough to gain that trust back. So it's funny. The demise of Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas, Stu, was Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, the Hoyer didn't make much sense at the time because you know what Brian Hoyer is. You've seen 15 years of Brian Hoyer as a backup in the NFL. You don't need to see much more. And O'Connell, at least you have that. Who knows what he's going to be? That question mark, the ceiling, if you will. Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking.
It was almost similar to when McAdoo was coaching the Giants, and McAdoo said, "Okay." Pretty much, he had the foresight. We got to kind of like start to move on from Eli Manning because Eli Manning was getting up there in age. So McAdoo wasn't wrong to suggest that. But I forget, was it Davis Webb who was the quarterback who was the unknown? I forget who the quarterback was that was the unknown. I think it was Davis Webb. And it was like, if you just went to Davis Webb, wherever the young quarterback was, everybody would be like, okay, you're trying someone out to get an evaluation to then go see if he could be the guy. If he's not the guy, then you move on. But when he tries Geno Smith out there on the field at the time, not what Geno Smith has become, where everyone wrote him off and he didn't write back. You know, we're all fans of Geno Smith, obviously. It was like, well, this just seems pointless. And going to Brian Hoyer a few weeks ago, if I was in that locker room, I'd be like, what the bleep? It was just stupid. It was nonsensical.
Yeah, what's the point? Yeah,
it was really dumb. So now, what's the future of Jimmy G? Like, they just went to Aiden O'Connell. I believe Aiden O'Connell, if he's able to stay healthy, they're at least going to give him the opportunity for the rest of the year. But Jimmy G just signed a brand new contract. That just because you sign a 3-year contract doesn't mean you're there the entire time. You know, in 2025, the dead cap goes to $12.8 million. Next year, the dead cap's due, though, on the surface. And I know people could, like, maneuver these numbers around when you used to think you couldn't. But on the surface, according to Spot Rack, the dead cap next year for Jimmy G is 28.3. Don't you kind of feel like, even though Jimmy G probably shouldn't be on the roster next year, that Jimmy G's going to be on the roster, and they're basically going to say to him, we don't want to have to take the hit on the dead cap. You're on the roster. Tough luck. There's not going to be suitors for Jimmy G. There shouldn't be suitors for Jimmy G. And we're going to pay you, and you're going to be a good soldier. And Jimmy G's been in situations where he's not been the guy before. So I'm not saying that he's going to want to sit there and take that, but what other leg do you really have to stand on? Because that's another thing that gets lost in it last night or on Monday night. Because you had the McDaniels dysfunction, the frustration of Davante Adams, all that roots back to Jimmy G being tabbed as the guy. Jimmy G the other night, and you've seen a lot of bad QB play still. You know, I have not been as unfortunate as you have in your NFL fandom. For a while, I saw this guy, Brady. He was pretty good. Before Brady, I saw about like a year of Bledsoe. You know, I had to watch a year of Matt Castle. You know, I have to see Mac Jones and Cam play for my football team. But for the most part, I had the standard. But when you look at this quarterback play for the Las Vegas Raiders, you've seen a lot of bad play. Jimmy G the other night, and I understand it's got to be tough mentally because of how much of a beating he has taken, and he knows that line stinks, and he suffered a lot of injuries. I saw a quarterback that was seeing ghosts. I saw a quarterback that was scared. And whenever he would drop back, and I know that offensive line is pretty bad to begin with, but even when he had some time, if a defensive lineman got close to him, he would just like curl right into the defensive lineman and give up on the play and not even throw the football. And at the end of the game, on what was it, 4th and 20, whatever, how do you throw like a 6 or 7 yard pass? That was Kirk Cousins in the playoffs throwing to TJ Hawkinson, except that was even more behind the sticks the other night with Jimmy Garoppolo. That's some bad QB play you saw the other night.
It was one of the worst I've seen. And like you said, that's saying something. Like, I saw Jamarcus Russell in person fumble the ball away 3 times against the Giants and throw for like 100 yards.
Never read the playbook.
Yeah, he was horrible. And there's been a lot of not great quarterbacks who play for the Raiders, but I would say that's probably one of the 5 worst quarterback games as a Raiders fan that I've seen. And that's saying a lot because they've had a lot of bad games, but he was horrible. He was taking sacks all over the place. The one interception he threw was an absolute lollipop, and he, again, missing Adams. It was so bad.
And the other crazy part is, if they just connect on 2 of those passes to Adams, like, I know you could say, mathematically they win the game. I don't think it works necessarily like that, because when you're watching that game, they never felt like they were going to go win the game. But let's just say he doesn't throw the pick and he gets a touchdown, and he connects on one of the passes towards the end, either the 99-yard one or the 50-yard one. Adams gets 2 touchdowns, and Adams walks away from the game even though they lost happy. Because Adams a few weeks ago, right, wasn't in a win when he started complaining too? After the rare win? He's like, I
After
get
they
2
beat the Patriots.
Yeah, I get 2 catches. That's not good enough. So maybe McDaniels doesn't get fired because doesn't it have to play a role in this? Because that was the big story after the game on Monday. It was Davante Adams isn't happy, and everyone was agreeing, free Davante Adams, like, get him out of the Raiders. And maybe Mark Davis looked at that and said, yeah, we are an embarrassment. We are a laughingstock. We have to make a move here. And I need to do something now to make sure that Davante Adams, even though I still think he'll request a trade at the end of the year, wants to stay on this team because he's under contract through 2026. Now, on the other side of this, the guy that got replaced by Jimmy G, he was Derek Carr. The Raiders were right in theory to move on from Derek Carr. But when you have rumors of Rodgers potentially going there, Brady potentially going there, you can't say, here's Jimmy G. Because I've said this for a while. Jimmy G is a quarterback. Jimmy G is not a very good quarterback. Jimmy G was in a good system in San Francisco. But I never believed that Jimmy G was that dude. So you go and you replace someone that kind of got screwed with the Raiders in terms of they never really gave him this good team. He loved being a Raider. McDaniels didn't want him there. That's part of the business. But now, today, Derek Carr is almost becoming this, like, sympathetic figure where it was like, imagine if they still had Derek Carr. Well, like Raiders fans, you would still stink, right? You saw a decade of Derek Carr. Yeah, he had that one MVP type of season. You know, he showed great leadership skills in the disaster that was John Gruden. But at the end of that game, he did throw a pick against the Cincinnati Bengals in that playoff game. So, like, Derek Carr's not that dude either. But I will say this now. Today may be a day where a lot of people go, it's a win for Derek Carr. Derek Carr was right. Derek Carr was exonerated. Shame on Josh McDaniels. He should have never got rid of him. Well, let's not look past Derek Carr's current situation with the Saints. Because today, Desmond Ridder got replaced with the Falcons for now. I know the coach is just saying 1 week. I think it should be more than that. By Taylor Heineke. So now you have a division where you have a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young, who's on a team with 1 win. They stink. You then have the Atlanta Falcons in that division, who are now starting Taylor Heineke. And then you also have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who got off to a good start, but are now struggling. And Baker Mayfield's playing like the real Baker Mayfield that we know, and it's not a good Baker Mayfield. It's not the Baker Mayfield that you saw at Oklahoma. So you look at this division, you are the great Derek Carr. You are someone that tries to make it out as if you're this really good quarterback in this league, and you have your brother who's a former quarterback, get on NFL Network and talk about how underappreciated he is and how good he is, and how some people try to make the case, not me, that Derek Carr's a top 10 quarterback. Well, Derek Carr, you need to win this division with the Saints. Because even though things have got off to a slow start, your team's now 4-4. And you have a division that's starting a rookie quarterback, a division that's starting Taylor Heineke and Baker Mayfield. If you don't win the division this year, I don't want to hear anyone say, Derek Carr was exonerated by the mess of Josh McDaniels, because he needs to play better. And that can't be the part of the conversation that we miss. And he had a good game last week. I'll give him credit. But now you need to see that consistently, because this is what Derek Carr does. Takes a few steps forward, and then right when you think he's like, all right, he's putting it together, top 10, he takes 3 or 4 steps back. But this year, just winning the division is what is expected. Now, I didn't think they'd win the division, but most think they are going to win the division. You don't do that bare minimum, it's an embarrassment, especially when you look at the other quarterbacks inside the NFC South. All right, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll come on back with a little news brief.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. 15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
Alrighty, news brief time right here. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. Let's go to Sean and RJ on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. They were talking to Jerry Jones as they do each and every week. Jerry Jones, one of the best spots in radio. I think the best spot in radio because every time he says something, it's a headline. Here is Jerry Jones on the importance of facing the Eagles.
This is easy for me to say, but this is serious that we're dealing with up here Sunday, man. We've got to really have our game face on.
So how about that? This is some serious bleep. And this is a big moment for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they have fared well up against the Eagles, and so has Dak Prescott. Now, division game, big moment. Everyone's going to be watching this, and it's a loaded weekend of games in the NFL. But so far with the Cowboys and their biggest test this year up against the 49ers, they got embarrassed. Now, I don't think there's a lot of pressure on the Eagles in this one. The Eagles are 7-1. The Eagles right now are the best team in the NFL. For the Cowboys, this is a big statement game, and you get two opportunities at the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go to Aaron Rodgers. Does the Jets record motivate him to come back? This courtesy of the Pat McAfee Show.
For sure. I mean, the goal is to come back, and the goal is to be able to have that conversation. Again, there's still a lot that has to happen.
Oh, yeah, that's his goal. But then the medical side of it has to come into play. And it's one thing, and it's remarkable that Aaron Rodgers is somehow on the field, having a catch, and then shortly after that, with having the surgery right after week 1, is able to drop back already. Like, that's wild. That's inconceivable to me. And you see him walking a lot without the crutches. So he keeps on having that goal. I think it's a good goal to have. I don't know how realistic it is. But so far, at least when he has shown he's on the field before the game, he's doing things I didn't even think he'd be able to do at this point. Here is Aaron Rodgers on his advice for Kirk Cousins tearing his Achilles, since now Aaron Rodgers, I guess, is the Achilles whisperer once again. This is courtesy of the Pat McAfee Show.
Just got to talk to him, hopefully encourage him a little bit. It's sucks. Passed along, all the information I could and let him know what's been working for me. Not sure what he ends up doing, but because the rehab's been great, because I feel so good, obviously people have been interested in what I'm doing.
Well, now he's going to be the whisperer. Now he's the medical whisperer, Aaron Rodgers. Let's go to Mike McDaniel. He was shocked that Stuart Kovacs and many other people are dressing up as Mike McDaniel for Halloween this year.
One of the hot costumes in Halloween is you. Kids wearing, I've seen it posted on social media, kids dressing up as Mike McDaniel.
That does not compute. That doesn't make any sense.
They did your run at Sunday football.
One kid did the run, and then a fan last night.
Was it faster than the kid?
That's great. I will admit, Mike McDaniel has grown on me. I thought last year I just wasn't in on the inside joke. At times, I didn't think I was in on the inside joke this year. But he goes out to all those reporters because the Dolphins are playing in Germany this weekend, which is so stupid. That game should be in Kansas City. And he's meeting like new media members, like foreign media members. And he goes, I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking I was, I'm a lot bigger in person than on the videos that they show me. Like, what an opening line for an NFL head coach to say when meeting a bunch of new media members. Here is Jim McElwain, the coach at Central Michigan. He was asked about the video that has surfaced on Connor Stallions, the spy, the Marine, the guy that's been getting all the signals stolen for Michigan, appearing on the Central Michigan sideline, allegedly. And I guess it was a game Central Michigan against Michigan State. And here's Jim McElwain, who did coach at Michigan. He was on Harbaugh's staff in 2018. Here's McElwain responding to it.
We've obviously are aware of a picture floating around with the sign stealer guy. Or people are doing everything they can to get to the bottom of it. We're totally unaware of it. I certainly don't condone it in any way, shape, or form. I do know that his name was on none of the passes that were let out. Now we just keep tracing it back and try to figure it out. But there's no place in football for that.
So I don't understand why Central Michigan is so afraid. It's either him on your sideline or it's not. And you should know by now. So, like, the AD kind of said, oh, yeah, we're investigating it. Then McElwain said what you just heard from him. I know that maybe he has some loyalty to Harbaugh, but, like, geez Louise. It's either he's on your sideline or not. And this is not, like, the mystery of D.B. Cooper, for crying out loud. I think you could figure this out rather quickly. Here is Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, on Colorado players getting their items stolen, like jewelry, at the Rose Bowl this past week when they were going up against UCLA.
All that stuff should be replaced. This is the Rose Bowl. They said the granddaddy of them all, right? I'm sure granddaddy has some money. Grandpa should have some money to get these kids. I'm going to have a list made out from these young men, and I know they're going to be truthful about what they lost so we could try to get that back for them. They may not be able to get the items back, but we should be able to reimburse them. That was unbelievable.
Like, I don't know about you guys. Is this like an inside job? Is it like, I would hate for this to be someone associated with the Colorado program? Or is this like a security staffer at the Rose Bowl? Because how do you get to that point where you're in the locker room, the visiting locker room, and you're able to steal things? Like, it's someone that has to have, I don't think this is just some random attendant, it could be, I guess, or some random person that made their way in. Like, this is a crazy story to me. Like, you play a game, how much security do you think is at these games? And remember when Prime was at Jackson State, he got stuff stolen. But it's just wild to me.
Didn't Tom Brady have a jersey taken out of his locker room at the Super Bowl?
So that was at the Super Bowl, you're right. It was the 28-3 comeback. But it's, you've covered Super Bowls. Like, every Tom, Dick, and Harry gets a credential. Now, it's still crazy, right? The quarterback of the Patriots getting a jersey stolen, right? And it's not only the quarterback of the Patriots, the greatest quarterback of all time. But there's a lot of people that have access to that locker room. How many people have access to the visiting Colorado locker room during a game? Like, that to me, and it's not as if, right, that was like I'm assuming the attendance wasn't great, because how many times you see the Rose Bowl practically empty these days? So it's a wild story, it really is. Here is the play-by-play of an epic comeback for the San Antonio Spurs last night. I thought this game was over, and it's typical basketball. You think it's over, and the next thing you know, the team comes on back, and Victor Wembanyama was awesome towards the end. Here is the call on TNT.
Three-pointer, no good. Wembanyama! It's a one-point game. 6.8 to go.
You might want to call a timeout to advance it.
Oh, Johnson takes it from him. Johnson hangs. Yes! And the Spurs have the lead.
What did I just witness?
It's not going to be perfect for Victor Wembanyama in year one, but you are already seeing signs that he's worth the hype. Because as you just heard from Reggie Miller, legendary basketball player, one of the 75 greatest players of all time, what did I just see? And he does things on the basketball court when he was going up, and it wasn't even that dunk, and like he grabbed the net and the ball still went through. It was wild. And even KD had no clue what hit him. Here is Victor Wembanyama on facing Kevin Durant last night.
I'm far from mastering the game as much as him, I know, because I try to do some stuff like him, but I think I'm maybe not patient enough. I think I want to go too fast, but he goes to his own pace and goes to his spots. I think I gotta not copy that, but get inspired by that.
He's the number one reason to watch the NBA this regular season. Like, I can't even think of a close second right now, because a lot of the times, most of these players, even with the incentives now to win awards, they don't play anyway in the regular season. And also, I thought the funniest thing yesterday, this in-season tournament, how they're having all these special courts for the in-season tournament was getting released, and everyone's trying to make this a big deal. Amateur hour. Absolute amateur hour by that spineless commissioner, Spineless Silver. All righty, let's keep it moving. We will go from one incompetent commissioner to another sport that has an incompetent commissioner. We go from NBA to Major League Baseball. The Texas Rangers are 1 win away from hoisting that piece of metal that is called the Commissioner's Trophy. We'll see if they get the job done tonight. At least we actually have a legit pitching matchup tonight with Nathan Eovaldi going up against Zach Gallen. But last night it was a bullpen game. The Rangers took advantage of it. Here is Corey Seager, who won the MVP with the Dodgers in the World Series back in 2020 on being 1 win away from another World Series title, this time in Texas.
It'd be awesome. Anytime you can put yourself in this position is where you want to be. So this team, this organization, it'd be a big one for us.
I think everyone's going to pick the Rangers tonight. I actually believe that the Diamondbacks are going to send this back to Texas, and this thing will be over in 6 games. I like the heart, at least in a blowout, that the Diamondbacks showed towards the end of the game. Not that I think this is going to turn it around. I don't want to sound like John Smoltz. I know that there's a lot of Rangers fans today. I think John Smoltz is just being a homer in this World Series and doesn't like the Rangers. I still think the Rangers are winning this series, but I got to think that the Diamondbacks, even though the Rangers haven't lost on the road this postseason, I got to think that the Diamondbacks find a way to get one at home. And finally, here's Christian Walker of the Diamondbacks on facing elimination in Game 5.
We're going to fight as hard as we can every pitch. We've had our backs up against the wall before. A little bit different. Every scenario is different, but we're gonna leave it all on the field.
So that's the last one for baseball. Let's go back to the gridiron. The big story today is Josh McDaniels got fired in the middle of the night along with David Ziegler. Here is the interim coach, Antonio Pierce, who I know was on the coaching staff at Arizona State, and I think was like the assistant head coach at Arizona State for Herm Edwards. Now he's on this Raiders staff, and the former Super Bowl champion linebacker for the Giants is now the interim head coach for the Raiders, and he addressed reporters earlier today.
It's a new day. It's a new chapter. It's a new era. It's a new mindset. What is that mindset? It's that of the Raider pride, the commitment to excellence, and making sure our alumni, our fan base, and Raider Nation are proud of what they see on the field. What does that look like? Tough, passionate, effort, energy, that enthusiasm that you see when we all watched our kids and these young men who are now pro athletes play when they're in Pop Warner. Having that love for the game. We had a great team meeting this morning. Everybody was steely-eyed and focused. We walked in with a smile on our face. The synergy, the energy in this building, and the personality of our players will reflect on who we are as Raiders. And we're tired of losing. It's not a good feeling. We're a production-based business. We're about competition, being competitive, and play with an edge and a swag and a certain confidence that when we walk out that damn tunnel, that everybody watching TV can see it.
There's no one in my life that exudes more energy that I know of than Stuart Kovacs. Stu is a long-suffering, tortured Raiders fan. Many people call him pessimistic, but I just say he's realistic. Stu, hearing that from Antonio Pierce, does it move the needle at all for you?
A tiny bit. I like it. I like to hear it. Yeah, it sounds good. Now we'll see if he puts it to, the actual field and actual results on the field, but it sounded really good in the press conference.
We may need to get a live camera on Stu during these games. Raiders Giants this week, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. 1, no confidence, 100, all the confidence in the world. Where's the confidence that Aiden O'Connell and Antonio Pierce get the job done for the Raiders? Raiders.
Out of 100, I'd say like 55. They're home. Giants aren't very good. I think they have a chance.
Wow. That's like the most optimistic I think I've heard you talk about
that's
this
probably
team
the most
this
you're
year.
going to hear all season.
Alrighty, that's the news brief. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll come on back. I know the College Football Playoff Committee gave out their rankings last night. I'll give you out my top 5 rankings in college football and the NFL. But first up, with the latest CBS Sports Radio update, here he is, the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, Antonio Pierce's first decision was to bench Jimmy Garoppolo, with the Raiders expected to start Aiden O'Connell on Sunday against the Giants. The Falcons also making a change at quarterback, starting Taylor Heineke this week against the Vikings, while Josh Allen missed practice today due to the shoulder injury suffered last Thursday, and Matthew Stafford also sitting out today due to an injured thumb. The Diamondbacks have been the epitome of resilient. They barely made the playoffs, then rallied from a 2-0 series deficit to win the National League pennant, and will need to do the same pretty much this week with the Diamondbacks facing elimination in the World Series. down 3-1. Only 6 teams have ever rallied from such a deficit. Manager Torey Lovello said despite last night's demoralizing loss, they're not about to quit now.
You keep fighting. You stay connected. You commit to the plan and the process for 27 outs, and you close the game up to 11-7. Got the fans engaged, got a ton of energy, got their closer in the game. There's a lot of positives to draw upon, and I will. But we got to tighten up the things that we know that went wrong.
The pitching matchup the same as it was for Game 1 with Nathan Eovaldi going up against Zach Gallen. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Jim Rome here, Thursday in the Jungle. NFL insider Tom Pelissero and Notre Dame running back Audric Estime. Plus, What's Your Beef? Thursday, 12 noon Eastern, 9 Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. $45 seconds remaining. $30 seconds remaining. $15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
It's time to answer our Ask the Pros question of the day, and it's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Let's go to Jim in Ohio, who says, Zach, Ohio State was ranked the #1 team in the country last night by the CFP. Do you believe they are the best team in college football? You could submit a question by tweeting at CBS Sports Radio or at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB, using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Let's answer that question right now in Take 5.
As the dust settles from last week's games, it's time to look at which teams are rising and which are falling.
And there's an interception.
Zach ranks his top 5 NFL and college football teams on this week's edition of Take 5, only on the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, we'll start things off in Detroit. After a bad loss to the Baltimore Ravens, you got an easy opponent, a layup in the Raiders, and you once again showed what that defense can be for the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff had a nice bounce-back game. He was surgical in that first half, and you start to see the implementation of one Jahmyr Gibbs as well, and Sam Laporta has been a stud for them this season. So the Lions get back in the win column. They're in an easy division. They're trending in the right direction. Good schedule for them the rest of the way, and they should be able to compile a lot more wins. They're 6-2, and the Detroit Lions are my 5th team in this edition of Take 5. My next stop, the Miami Dolphins, coming off a bad loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, and where we all know how great the Eagles are, but they didn't really show up in the game. I never thought the Dolphins were alive, and that is concerning in their 2 biggest games of the season. You showed up against the Bills, and you didn't give a good performance up against the Eagles. You got the Patriots coming on into your house, and you found a way to beat them and do so going away. You're getting healthier. Jalen Ramsey's now back, 94 days removed from the meniscus injury. You'll eventually get Devon Achane back, who was big for them earlier in the season. And you have Tyreek Hill, who's looking like he could be the MVP of the league, complemented with Jalen Waddle as well. This defense is getting healthier. This team is getting healthier. And we know the Dolphins can put up a ridiculous amount of points. They've already put up 271 points this season, and that's the most points in the NFL. So the Miami Dolphins are in at number 4. Number 3, wasn't a great performance against the Cardinals, but style points don't matter. The Baltimore Ravens have been a really good team this year. Their defense is playing some really solid football. Offensively, they don't have a lot of names on the offensive side of the ball outside of their quarterback and Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers having a good rookie season. I would have liked to have seen the Ravens go out and acquire a running back at the deadline, or at least another solid wide receiver that you could rely on. I know that Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't happy towards the end of that game, but who cares? Like at this stage of his career, but the Ravens have won 3 games in a row. The Ravens annihilated the Detroit Lions, who are my 5th team 2 weeks ago. Baltimore sitting in a good spot at 6-2. It all comes down to the health of course, their quarterback in Lamar Jackson. In at number 2, yeah, they haven't looked great offensively. Yeah, they lost another game. But the Kansas City Chiefs, and being a vulnerable team once again, are still sitting in a pretty damn good spot. Tough game this weekend against the Miami Dolphins in Germany. Early feel on this Wednesday. I kind of like the Dolphins to win the game. The Dolphins are due to win a big game, but Kansas City still 6-2. And as long as Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are healthy, they're going to have a chance to once again be the AFC team that's in the Super Bowl and can beat anybody. And then in at number 1, funny, we haven't heard from Ryan in Santa Barbara, who a few weeks ago chastised me on this show and yelled at me and called me a bunch of names and told me to be quiet and laughed at me, insulted me when I told him the Eagles are better than the 49ers. Notice the 49ers, after losing 3 in a row, aren't in the top 5. We're trying to find them somewhere. Where'd the 49ers go? Where'd the confident 49ers go? And the Philadelphia Eagles keep on winning games. As I said earlier, style points don't matter in this league. In the words of Al Davis, just win, baby. And that's what the Philadelphia Eagles have continued to do. Only 1 loss this year, and it was a bad interception by Jalen Hurts up against the Jets, and they could be undefeated, but they're 7-1. Fly, Eagles, fly. Those are my top 5 this week. Lions 5, Dolphins 4, Ravens 3, Chiefs 2, and the Eagles in at 1. Big Mike CBS, Moist Mike, whatever you want to call it. Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Big Mike CBS, I know that second name. I have no idea who that is.
Come on, give me some moisty teams.
Well, you mentioned your boy Ryan. How about those 49ers? Like, why don't they belong in there? I know they've lost 3 straight, but I mean, defensively, they are unstoppable.
Not last week. They were horrible up against the Cincinnati Bengals defensively. Now they get Chase Young. I'm a man of math. I'm not good at math, but it's simple. Lions are in front of them. They have 6 wins. The Eagles are in front of them. They have 7 wins. And that's just in the NFC. And then you look at the other teams I mentioned, all in take 5, 6 wins and 6 wins as well, and another 6-win team. So simple math. They're 5-3. They're trending in the wrong direction right now, losing 3 in a row.
All right, the Bengals, the team that I think is the best team in the AFC.
I don't think that's a crazy take.
Behind my Chiefs, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say.
Second best
look
team
how
in the
quickly
AFC.
You're jumping off that Chiefs bandwagon. The Bengals are 4-3. The Bengals are back in the circle of trust. I think the Bengals, you could argue, are the second most dangerous team in the AFC, but I got to see more consistency from them. We're all getting back in. Now let's see what you do against the Bills this week, and if you can get to 5-3, you'll rise up those rankings. Monitoring them, they're taking a step in the right direction, but not ready to say they're a top 5 team in the NFL just yet. Anyone else?
Yeah, last one. I mean, you talked about them all season long, the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence.
I think they're a heck of a team, and Josh Allen has 9 sacks on the season, which is big for them. They need Trayvon Walker to get going, and you have a great quarterback. They're really damn good. I thought about them, but I just put the Lions edging them out slightly, and that's why I didn't go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. That performance up against the Kansas City Chiefs still concerned me a little bit, and the Lions did beat the Chiefs earlier in the season. All righty, rapid fire. Let's go to college football here. In at number 5, I'm putting the Oregon Ducks. The Ducks go to Utah, and not only did they defeat Kyle Whittingham, which like no one ever does on his home turf, they blew him out. That was one of the more dominant performances I've seen by a team this year, and the Ducks only have 1 loss, and it was to Washington, who they lost because their kicker missed a chip shot, and the game didn't get to go to overtime. Bo Nix has been sensational, and that Ducks defense, quack, was awesome this past weekend. Number 4. I know they have not played well the last 2 weeks, but style points shouldn't matter here. They have, you could argue, the best win in the country right now, according to the college football playoff rankings. When you look at the rankings, Washington is 5. They should have been in the top 4. And Oregon is 6. That's a tremendous win for Washington. They beat Oregon, and they're undefeated. And they have a guy that could win the Heisman, and Michael Penix Jr. So Washington's in at 4. 3, Florida State. Dominant season so far for them. They survived against Clemson. They destroyed LSU in the second half. They beat Duke. I know the Clemson and Duke wins aren't aging well, but man, their quarterback, Jordan Travis, is an absolute dog, and he's one of the toughest quarterbacks in the country. And at number 2, it's Michigan. I did have Michigan, I think, 1 last week, and then Georgia to go up against Florida, and people are like, oh, is this the week that they missed Brock Bowers? And that wasn't the case for Georgia. Michigan just hasn't really played anybody yet. They still have Penn State. They still have Ohio State. I think they'll beat both those teams because they're better than both those teams. And then at number 1, Georgia now back into the dominant category like they ever left. They haven't lost a game. Georgia is in that number 1 spot. So 5 through 1, Oregon 5, Washington 4, Florida State 3, Michigan 2, Georgia 1. Samter, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, you said that Washington has the best win. Well, Steve Sarkisian thinks that Texas has the best win, beating Alabama. Why is Texas not in your top 5?
Because Texas has a loss on the season.
So does Oregon.
That's true. But Oregon is a better team, in my opinion, and they play in the tougher conference than Texas. And also, Malik Murphy played fine. When are you getting Quinn Ewers back? Are they going to go to Arch Manning? There's uncertainty there at the quarterback position. And also, even though you beat or you lost to Oklahoma, that was your loss. It's like after that, all right, you survived against Houston and then you beat BYU. It's like, not really impressive moments there. And in the biggest game of the year, you lost to Oklahoma.
And the team they beat, Alabama, they seem like they're rolling tide.
Yeah, so I was really impressed with Bama when they were down to Tennessee. They had that big third quarter comeback, and then they won that game. It's ultimately coming down to the SEC championship game, and let's see what happens with Alabama.
And how can you not have the college football playoff ranking number 1 overall team, Ohio State, in your top 5?
And also, big game for Bama this weekend against LSU. That will tell us a lot about Alabama. It's very simple with Ohio State. I'm just not a believer in them. I don't trust Kyle McCord. That defense is awesome. They should have lost the game to Notre Dame. McCord should have thrown that pick. It was an easy drop, or it was an easy catch, and then Notre Dame dropped it. And against Penn State, yeah. It was a great defensive performance. Marvin Harrison Jr. was awesome, but I wasn't impressed with Kyle McCord. I think that team could be got, and they weren't that impressive against Wisconsin. I just think those 5 teams are better than them. Ohio State would be my 6th team. All right, talk to you tomorrow, everybody. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.